The age of Earth is a concept that encompasses vast temporal scales on which our planet has evolved. If we imagine Earth as a gigantic hourglass of sand, human life and all our history would be but insignificant grains of sand slipping through a glass stopper. Over billions of years of Earth's existence, our species, Homo sapiens, appeared only at the very end of this endless process. The age of Earth can be compared to a river flowing slowly and inexorably, where each moment, each event, each change in the landscape is but a drop in the boundless stream of time. Earth formed as a result of complex processes that began with the formation of the solar system, when gas and dust began to coalesce under the influence of gravity, forming planets. This was a time when Earth had no water, no life, and its surface was a field of molten lava and poisonous atmosphere. Gradually, over millions of years, the planet cooled and oceans began to form, opening the way for life. Bacteria, the simplest organisms, appeared on Earth more than 3 billion years ago, and their evolution led to the formation of complex life forms such as fish, reptiles, and eventually mammals. When we speak of human history, it occupies no more than 0.1% of the entire history of Earth. For example, the first stone tools created by our ancestors date back to around 2.5 million years ago. But this is but a fleeting moment compared to the billion-year timescales of continent and ocean formation. Imagine that all human achievements, from the invention of the wheel to space exploration, are but sparks in the fire of geological time. Each moment we consider significant loses its meaning in this context, like a drop of water in the ocean. Our entire experience, culture, and even wars are but moments in the grand temporal scale. For instance, ancient Greece, with its philosophers and great cities, appeared around 2,500 years ago, which is a mere blink of an eye for Earth. The Roman Empire lasted only a few hundred years, and the Middle Ages are but a few moments in the face of billions of years. Recall that dinosaurs ruled Earth for around 160 million years, and their disappearance occurred around 65 million years ago, which is still not far in geological terms. Their time on Earth was 1,000 times longer than all of human existence. Even ancient civilizations like the Sumerians appeared on the scene around 5,000 years ago, which is but a tiny fraction of the vast temporal mosaic. Thus, when we try to grasp the age of our planet, we encounter a challenge: how to fit such colossal temporal scales into our consciousness. It is like trying to hold a mountain in one's hands or count the stars in the boundless sky. We live on a planet that has already experienced numerous catastrophes and changes, from asteroid impacts to ice ages, and each of these epochs has left its mark on its surface. For example, the Ice Age, which lasted around 1 million years, changed the landscape of Europe and North America, leaving unique geographical formations like the Great Lakes. And in this ocean of time, human existence is but a brief flash. Humanity, as a species, appeared on Earth only a few tens of thousands of years ago, and we have already managed to make the most incredible changes on the planet, including industrialization and climate change. Meanwhile, Earth continues its journey, like a vast ship sailing through the boundless seas of time, and even if we disappear, its history will continue. It was here before us and will be here after us, like an unwearying river flowing through the centuries, indifferent to the fleeting lives that pass by. For example, the earliest known civilization, the Sumerian, can be dated to only a few thousand years, while continents were formed over millions of years. This creates a scale that is difficult to comprehend, but it is precisely this scale that underscores the incredible richness and diversity of life on our planet. In the earliest times, Earth was a molten, fiery sphere, with surface temperatures reaching incredible values, around 1,000 degrees Celsius. This was a world where magma did not merely erupt onto the surface, but formed vast oceans of molten liquid that periodically exploded in volcanic eruptions. The constant rumbling and cracking of volcanoes created a soundscape that echoed the power and chaos of this primordial world. Massive columns of lava rose into the sky, forming fiery rivers that flowed downward like streams of light, destroying everything in their path. At this time, metals such as iron and nickel existed in liquid form, forming subsurface layers that, upon cooling, became the foundation for future continents. The atmosphere surrounding this fiery planet was opaque and consisted of toxic gases, carbon dioxide, methane, and hydrogen sulfide. These gases formed a dense shield that hid the fiery ocean from space and created conditions in which life, as we know it, would be impossible. The glow emanating from the molten surface was not only due to lava, but also from constant lightning strikes caused by electrical discharges from volcanic activity. Each volcanic eruption released clouds of ash and toxic gases that rose into the sky, poisoning the atmosphere and creating a unique but dangerous landscape. The heat emanating from the surface was so intense that the very air seemed to melt, and under such temperatures, water could not exist in liquid form, turning into steam that filled the atmosphere. This was an era of constant chaos and destruction, where every moment could be the last for any existing element. Such conditions were necessary for the formation of the planet we know today, and it was in this fiery hell that the elements that would later become the basis for life were born. It is believed that this period, known as the Archean, lasted for around 1 billion years, during which the first continents were formed, which later became the habitat of the earliest forms of life. Data on temperature, atmosphere, and volcanic activity during this period have been obtained through the study of ancient rock samples that have preserved traces of those distant times. For example, analysis of samples from Greenland and Canada shows that even billions of years after these events, the planet still retained signs of its tumultuous beginnings. Scientific research indicates that these conditions acted as a catalyst for further planetary development, shaping not only the physics of Earth, but also its chemical composition. The formation of early Earth began approximately 4.5 billion years ago as a result of a complex process of aggregation of cosmic dust and debris. These particles, composed of hydrogen, helium, and heavier elements, began to slowly attract each other under the influence of gravity. This process was not instantaneous and took millions of years. Gradually, smaller objects, such as planetesimals, accumulated, forming larger bodies. During this period, numerous collisions occurred, resulting in the formation of protoplanets. For example, during the formation of Earth, a collision with an object the size of Mars likely caused the formation of the Moon, according to the hypothesis. These collisions released a colossal amount of energy, leading to the melting of material and the formation of a magma ocean. Gravity continued to act, causing heavier elements such as iron and nickel to sink to the center of the forming world, while lighter elements such as silicon and oxygen remained closer to the surface. This process also contributed to the formation of the first layers of the mantle and crust. In the early stages, when the surface temperature was extremely high, Earth was a formless mass of molten lava, and its atmosphere consisted mainly of toxic gases. Gradually, as the surface cooled, the first oceans began to form. Water likely came from both icy comets and volcanic sources, creating conditions for the appearance of the first simple forms of life. Thus, as a result of countless asteroid and comet collisions, the structure of our planet gradually formed, becoming the basis for the further development of Earth as a unique world. Approximately 3 billion years ago, the formation of continents began, while oceans occupied up to 80% of the surface. The process of Earth's differentiation began when the planet was in a molten state, approximately 4.5 billion years ago. At that time, the substances that make up Earth were in a liquid form with varying densities. Under the influence of gravitational forces and heat released from the decay of radioactive elements, heavier materials began to gradually sink towards the center, while lighter components rose to the surface. This is similar to how oil rises to the surface of water when both liquids are at rest. In the molten Earth, heavier elements such as iron and nickel began to concentrate in the core, while lighter substances like silicon and oxygen rose and formed the mantle and crust. The process of differentiation did not occur instantaneously, but stretched over millions of years, creating conditions for the formation of various layers within the Earth. Energy released from meteorite impacts and radioactive decay contributed to the planet's heating, maintaining the molten state of the material. It is important to note that this process laid the foundation for the future structure of our planet and created conditions for the formation of continents and oceans. As the upper layers cooled and solidified, the crust formed, and the process of differentiation continued to influence geological processes, forming volcanoes and mountain ranges. Over billions of years, this differentiation has continued to affect plate tectonics, which still determines the geography of Earth. Research shows that the main part of the heat inside the Earth is maintained by radioactive decay, which supports the activity of the mantle and core, creating a magnetic field that protects our planet from solar radiation. This process, similar to how a layer of fat rises to the surface of a pot when heated, has been fundamental in creating the unique conditions necessary for life. Thus, Earth's differentiation played a key role in the formation of the complex and dynamic system we observe today. Current geological research indicates that this process is still ongoing, albeit to a lesser extent. The formation of Earth's core was the result of a long and complex process that took place over millions of years. In the early stages of the planet's existence, when it was mostly molten, heavy elements such as iron and nickel began to slowly settle towards the center under the influence of gravity. This process can be compared to how heavy stones sink to the bottom of a river while lighter particles remain on the surface. Gravity, acting on these dense metals, created conditions for their concentration in the center of the planet. Gradually, as the surface of Earth cooled, heavy elements continued their movement towards the core, passing through layers of molten magma and other minerals. The immense pressure that built up during this process reached extraordinary levels, exceeding several million atmospheres. This pressure compressed iron and nickel, transforming them into solid states and forming the inner core, which, according to current data, has a radius of approximately 1,200 kilometers and is primarily composed of iron, with some nickel impurities. The outer core, located above it, remains in a liquid state, allowing metals to continue moving and creating complex dynamic processes, such as the generation of Earth's magnetic field. This magnetic field, in turn, protects our planet from solar wind and cosmic radiation, which is critically important for the existence of life. The process of core formation was not only slow, but also extremely complex, as it required millions of years to reach its current state. The inner core reaches temperatures of around 5,000 degrees Celsius, making it one of the hottest places on the planet. Nevertheless, despite these extreme conditions, the core remains stable due to the fact that the elements are densely packed under the action of enormous pressure. This core structure is the basis for understanding many geological processes occurring on the surface of Earth, from volcanic activity to earthquakes. Thus, the formation of Earth's core is a remarkable testament to the power of gravity and the dynamics of our planet, determining its physical characteristics. The Earth's mantle is a layer situated between the core and the crust, occupying approximately 93% of our planet's volume. This layer consists of molten rock that is in a semi-liquid state and has a viscous consistency. Temperatures in the mantle range from 1,000 to 4,000 degrees Celsius, creating conditions for slow but powerful convective currents. These currents function like a colossal ocean, transporting heat from the planet's interior to the surface. In some areas, the mantle reaches depths of around 2,900 kilometers, and its upper part, within the asthenosphere, allows lithospheric plates to move. This mobility of plates, in turn, determines geological processes such as earthquakes and volcanism. Volcanic activity, for instance, is often associated with ascending magma flows that break through the crust from the mantle. These flows can form new volcanoes if magma reaches the surface, as seen with stratovolcanoes like Vesuvius in Italy and Kilimanjaro in Tanzania. The mantle is also responsible for a process known as horizontal movement, where heat and materials rise to the crust, forming mountain ranges and altering the landscape. Research indicates that these convective flows can move at a speed of just a few centimeters per year. But even such slow changes can lead to significant transformations on Earth's surface. For example, mantle movements have contributed to the formation of the Himalayas when the Indian plate collided with the Eurasian plate around 50 million years ago. The complex structure of the mantle has its unique features. It is composed of various minerals such as olivine and pyroxene, which, at high temperatures and pressures, form rocks called peridotites. These minerals play a crucial role in the heat exchange process within the Earth and in the formation of magma. The mantle, as the primary heat source for Earth, also influences the planet's magnetic field, as the movement of molten materials in the core and mantle generates electric currents responsible for the generation of the magnetic field. Therefore, the Earth's mantle plays a vital role in geological processes and in maintaining the conditions necessary for life on the planet. Approximately 4.5 billion years ago, a colossal catastrophe occurred that fundamentally altered the appearance of our planet. A protoplanet the size of Mars, known as Theia, collided with young Earth, resulting in a catastrophic impact that is hard to imagine. The immense energy released by this impact is comparable to an explosion that could have destroyed an entire civilization if it had occurred on Earth. Upon impact, Theia's atmosphere and surface ejected a vast amount of material, including mantle and crust particles. Scientists estimate that up to 1/3 of Earth's mass was ejected into space, which is approximately 10% of our planet's mass. The explosion created a cloud of molten and floating particles that surrounded Earth. These debris were in chaotic motion, but Earth's gravity gradually began to gather them into larger masses. Over several tens of thousands of years, particles began to condense, forming the primary body of the Moon. This process took around 100 million years, during which the Moon grew in size and orbited Earth. The study of this event became possible through the analysis of meteorites and lunar samples collected during the Apollo missions. Research shows that the isotopic composition of lunar rocks is almost identical to that of Earth's rocks, confirming the hypothesis of a common origin for Earth and the Moon. This catastrophe not only changed Earth's physical structure, but also influenced its climate, ultimately creating suitable conditions for the emergence of life. The Moon formed as a result of this collision had a decisive impact on Earth, stabilizing its axis of rotation and creating tides that contributed to the development of ecosystems. Thus, the collision with Theia was not just a catastrophe, but also a crucial stage in the history of our planet, determining its further evolution. The scale of this event is difficult to overestimate. It was one of the greatest catastrophes in the history of the solar system, leaving an indelible mark on its future. Estimates show that the Moon formed at a distance of approximately 30,000 kilometers from Earth, which was very close, considering the size and mass of the forming Moon. The Moon is not just a satellite of Earth, but a powerful factor determining many processes on our planet. It appeared around 4 billion years ago and has been influencing our lives ever since. The gravitational pull of the Moon stabilizes the Earth's axial tilt, which in turn maintains a moderate climate. Without this stabilizing factor, our planet could have become a place with more extreme climatic conditions, hindering the development of life. The presence of the Moon also creates tides in the oceans, affecting the ecosystems living in coastal zones. These tides facilitate the mixing of water and oxygen, which is critically important for aquatic life. Ancient civilizations such as the Sumerians and Egyptians paid attention to the Moon in their calendars, using its phases for agricultural cycles. For example, in ancient Egypt, the phases of the Moon were used to determine the timing of the Nile's floods, which played a crucial role in agricultural life. The Moon also influences animal migrations. Many species, such as turtles and fish, navigate by its light. This connection between the Moon and Earth has deep roots, dating back billions of years when our planet was still forming. Thus, the Moon is not just an observer, but an active participant in the development of Earth, shaping its ecosystems and climate. The Moon's mass is approximately 1/8 of Earth's mass, creating a powerful gravitational link that affects geological processes such as plate tectonics. The Moon also impacts Earth's magnetic field, playing a crucial role in protecting our atmosphere from solar wind. Studies have shown that without the Moon, tectonic activity on Earth could have been significantly reduced, affecting the formation of continents and oceans. Comparable to how ice caps influence sea levels, the Moon helps maintain balance in natural processes. Its presence creates unique conditions that make our planet habitable. The Moon is also a significant object in the culture and mythology of many peoples, representing various aspects of human experience and perception. For example, in ancient Greek mythology, the Moon was associated with the goddess Artemis, symbolizing fertility and protection. Scientific missions, such as Apollo, have shown that the Moon retains information about the early stages of the formation of the solar system, making it a vital object for study. Since its appearance, the Moon and Earth have formed a unique pair, interacting on many levels. The presence of the Moon near our planet is not just a physical fact. It is a part of our history, influencing everything we know about the world. The Moon exerts a significant influence on tides, which is due to its gravitational attraction. This attraction causes the oceans of Earth to rise, creating tidal waves that wash over the coasts twice a day. Approximately every 12 hours and 25 minutes, a complete cycle of high and low tides occurs. The Moon's gravity pulls water towards it, forming what are known as tidal bulges that move across the ocean's surface. These bulges can reach heights of up to 3 meters, depending on location and sea conditions. As a result of the constant movement of water, coastal lines are formed, which change depending on the strength of the tide, creating unique ecosystems in tidal zones. Such ecosystems, such as mangrove forests and salt marshes, are home to many species of animals and plants that have adapted to these extreme conditions. For example, mollusks and crabs living in tidal zones can survive both in water and on land, allowing them to use both environments for feeding and reproduction. In ancient times, when the Moon was closer to Earth, its gravitational influence was even more powerful. This led to the creation of massive tidal waves that crashed onto continents with such force that they altered the coastline. Scientific research shows that about 3 billion years ago, the Moon was approximately 90,000 kilometers from Earth, which contributed to more intense tides. These powerful tides could cause catastrophic effects for coastal ecosystems, washing away soil and altering the usual conditions of habitation. In some places, such tides created natural barriers that later became the basis for the formation of new ecosystems. Scientists studying geological layers have found traces of ancient tides that indicate how the Moon and its gravity have shaped the Earth's appearance over millions of years. Tides and ebbs also played a crucial role in marine life, facilitating the migration of fish and other marine organisms that follow changes in water level in search of food and breeding grounds. For example, salmon returning to their spawning grounds use these tidal currents for navigation, which is vital for their life cycle. Therefore, the Moon's influence on tides and ebbs not only shapes the physical environment, but also affects the biological diversity of marine ecosystems. In some regions, such as the Bay of Fundy, tides can reach heights of up to 12 meters, making them among the highest in the world. The Moon, with its massive gravity, plays a crucial role in stabilizing the Earth's axial tilt, keeping it within a range of 22 to 26 degrees. This tilt is critically important for shaping the planet's climate conditions. Without the Moon, this tilt could fluctuate more significantly, leading to dramatic climate changes. For instance, scientists suggest that without the stabilizing influence of the Moon, Earth's climate could oscillate between extremely cold and hot periods, making the existence of complex life forms such as mammals and plants extremely challenging. Research has shown that similar changes in the axis of rotation of planets can result in much more extreme climate conditions, as observed on planets without large moons, such as Mars. On this planet, the axis tilt varies from 15 to 42 degrees, leading to sharp changes in climatic zones. It is the presence of the Moon that acts as an anchor, preventing chaotic oscillations of the Earth's rotation axis. This stabilizing influence helps maintain moderate climate conditions, which in turn fosters the development of biodiversity and complex ecosystems. Scientists like Dr. David Lynch from NASA emphasized that it is precisely because of the Moon that Earth has a stable climate that has supported life for millions of years. Without this satellite, as analysis of other planets shows, life on Earth could have evolved differently or not at all. The Moon is not just a satellite, but a vital element of our planetary system, providing balance and stability that we take for granted. For example, planets with smaller moons, such as Venus, experience extreme climate conditions that do not support life. Therefore, the presence of the Moon makes Earth unique in the solar system, creating conditions in which life can exist and evolve. Without the Moon, as history shows for other planets, Earth's climate could have become unpredictable and hostile to life. Initially, the Earth was in a state of molten mass, where the temperature exceeded thousands of degrees. In this cauldron, there was a turbulent mixing of materials consisting of heavy metals and light silicates. Gradually, as a result of the cooling process, the upper layers of the planet began to lose their high temperature and form a hard shell. This can be compared to the cooling of metal, which, when poured into a mold, first remains liquid and then, as it cools, begins to solidify, forming a strong surface. In the early stages of Earth's cooling, when heat slowly dissipated into space, the upper layer of molten material formed a kind of crust, similar to the film that forms on the surface of hot soup as it cools. Initially, this crust was thin and brittle, but over time it thickened as the planet continued to cool and more stable conditions emerged. Beneath this crust, processes continued, with magma rising to the surface and forming volcanoes, releasing gases that eventually became the basis for the formation of the atmosphere. This process resembled a multi-layered cake, where each new layer was created as the previous one cooled and solidified. The formation of the first continents occurred as a result of complex geological processes. The appearance of a solid crust also contributed to the formation of the first oceans, as water vapor condensed and settled on the surface. This event can be compared to how rain fills a desert, creating puddles and gradually turning it into a green oasis. Water accumulating in small depressions contributed to further cooling of the Earth, allowing its surface to continue solidifying. One of the key aspects of this process was the formation of the first minerals and rocks, which became the foundation for future Earth geology. Research shows that in the early stages of planet formation, the active release of carbon and sulfur played a significant role in the formation of the atmosphere and the primary climate. As a result, as the Earth gradually cooled, its surface became increasingly stable and conditions necessary for life began to form. The finely cooled crust became the basis for the formation of continents, as well as the first forms of life, which appeared billions of years later. Scientific data indicate that at this time, the first primitive cells appeared, which became the ancestors of all living organisms on the planet. On the surface of the molten ocean of magma, the first solid patches began to form, thin and fragile crusts that acted as islands in the sea of liquid. These primary crusts, formed due to the cooling of the upper layers of the magma mass, had an unstable structure and were constantly subjected to destructive forces. Internal planetary forces, such as volcanic activity and tectonic movements, caused these crusts to lose their integrity quickly. Over millions of years, some areas were destroyed while new ones emerged, creating a continuous cycle of birth and death. These islands of solid rock, sometimes reaching several kilometers in diameter, collided, broke apart, and merged again to form larger masses. The earliest samples of crust, such as granites and volcanic rocks, appeared around 4 billion years ago, when Earth was in the stage of active formation. The chemical composition of these early crusts was significantly different from today's. They did not contain oxygen and silicon in the quantities we observe now. Instead, they were dominated by heavier elements like iron and magnesium. These fragile pieces of crust formed as a result of magma cooling that rose to the surface through cracks and faults in the Earth's crust. The temperature of the molten magma could reach from 1,000 to 1,300 degrees Celsius, and as soon as it came into contact with the colder atmosphere, it began to harden quickly. However, this process was uneven. In some places, the crust could form faster than in others, creating an uneven surface full of depressions and elevations. Gradually, as the Earth cooled, these islands began to connect with each other, forming larger areas, but their instability remained a characteristic feature. Due to the constant influence of volcanoes, earthquakes, and other natural phenomena, the primary crust remained subject to changes. Some parts were eroded by water or destroyed by erosion, while new areas continued to form. Over time, approximately 3.5 billion years ago, the formation of more stable continents began. But the earliest crustal formations of that period were completely different from what we see today. These primitive islands of solid rocks floating on the surface of the molten ocean were just the beginning of a long process of continent formation that continued for millions of years. The diversity of shapes and textures of these early formations set the tone for future geological processes, but they remained fragile and temporary, like soap bubbles on the surface of water. The atmosphere of early Earth was unbearably hostile, forming a dense, opaque layer of toxic gases that enveloped the planet. Around 3.5 billion years ago, when Earth was just beginning to form, its atmosphere was more like a nightmare than a place for life. Frequent volcanic eruptions filled the air with carbon dioxide and sulfur dioxide, creating conditions where even the most primitive forms of life had no chance of survival. Surface temperatures reached over 100 degrees Celsius, and molten lava spewing from the planet's interior evaporated water, releasing toxic vapors into the atmosphere. Gases such as methane and ammonia formed a thick veil that blocked out sunlight, plunging the planet into eternal twilight. Solar rays that might have created the illusion of a clear sky were absorbed by this opaque atmosphere, leaving the surface in complete darkness, as if in the darkest corner of the cosmos. The absence of free oxygen meant that even if there were organisms capable of photosynthesis, they would have no chance of survival. Instead, the atmosphere was a cocktail of toxic gases, with carbon dioxide making up more than 90% of the volume and sulfur dioxide and ammonia adding their toxic notes to this deadly mixture. Research shows that even a slight contamination with oxygen in such conditions could have had catastrophic consequences for any life that existed at the time. Particles of ash and gas fell to the surface, creating clouds that, like leaden spheres, further darkened the world beneath them. This period, known as the Archean, was an era when the planet was not only lifeless, but also heartless, where every moment of existence was filled with mortal danger. The unique conditions of this primitive atmosphere paved the way for future changes. But at that time, life as we know it was absolutely impossible. As a result, Earth remained in this dark state until significant geological and biochemical changes occurred, eventually creating an environment suitable for life. Over billions of years, these conditions facilitated the formation of the first cells, which became the foundation for all life on the planet. The process of degassing on Earth is a complex and lengthy process, during which gases that were trapped within the planet's interior gradually escaped to the surface. This process can be visualized as a planet that exhales its internal atmosphere through countless volcanoes and fissures in the crust. Volcanic eruptions that occurred over millions of years played a crucial role in this phenomenon. When magma rose from the mantle and reached the surface, gases dissolved within it were released into the atmosphere, forming clouds of steam, carbon dioxide, and other elements. Each of these emissions added a new portion of gases to the atmosphere, contributing to the formation of the primary gaseous envelope of Earth. This process occurred not only during powerful eruptions, but also through subtle emissions through crustal fissures, which acted as vents, allowing gases to escape to the surface over long periods. Volcanic activity, for example, in regions like Iceland, clearly demonstrates how this degassing continues to this day. The volcano Hekla, one of the most active volcanoes in Iceland, emits gases and ash, leaving traces that indicate ancient degassing processes. It is important to note that in the process of degassing, not only carbon dioxide was released, but also other essential components such as water vapor and ammonia, which significantly influenced the subsequent development of the atmosphere. Gases released as a result of volcanic activity created conditions for the formation of clouds and, ultimately, for the appearance of precipitation. This process was not instantaneous, but spanned millions of years, gradually altering the atmosphere and its composition. With each new eruption, Earth seemed to renew itself, providing new elements for the formation of life. Therefore, degassing was not just a physical process. It was the foundation for creating conditions necessary for the development of the biosphere. Volcanic islands like Hawaii are the result of long-term volcanic activity, where gases released from the interior created new lands and, consequently, new ecosystems. Thus, volcanoes are not just destructive forces. They become sources of life, shaping landscapes and creating atmospheric conditions necessary for life. This exhalation of the planet continued until the atmosphere reached a state necessary for the maintenance of liquid water on the surface, which was a decisive factor in the emergence of life on Earth. Ultimately, the heated nature of these processes leads to the formation of new gases within the planet, ready to be released again. The cooling of Earth led to significant changes in the atmosphere, rich in water vapor. This vapor, formed as a result of volcanic activity and the influence of solar light on meteoritic waters, began to condense when the planet's surface temperature dropped to around 100 degrees Celsius. The condensation process became the foundation for the formation of the first oceans. For millions of years, this process continued, resulting in relentless downpours that poured onto the surface with such force that the sky seemed to be torn apart by thunder, and the land was filled with water. These rains gave rise to rivers that filled lowlands and depressions, where water collected to form primary seas. According to scientists, this Great Deluge lasted approximately 100 million years, beginning around 3 billion years ago, when the Earth's temperature was significantly higher than today, and the atmosphere was more like a greenhouse. Water filled in the depressions, creating vast internal seas, such as the ancient Tethys Sea, which existed between the current continents. Meanwhile, the first oceans began to form in the very same depressions filled with rainwater. Over time, the rains became less intense, and water gradually settled in its new homes, forming oceans that, according to estimates, covered around 30% of the Earth's surface. Research shows that during the formation of the oceans, the water level fluctuated significantly, leading to the formation of temporary continents and islands that disappeared and reappeared. Gradually, the outlines of the modern oceans, such as the Pacific, Atlantic, and Indian, took shape and eventually covered a large part of the planet's surface. These oceans became not only the source of life, but also important climate regulators that supported ecosystems that would evolve over millions of years. Oceans contain around 98% of all the water on the planet, and their formation was one of the key moments in the history of Earth. The first oceans, born from water vapor, provided the conditions for the emergence of life, as it was in these waters that the simplest organisms began to develop, which later became the ancestors of all modern forms of life. The early ocean of Earth was vastly different from today's bodies of water. Its chemical composition was rich in minerals and organic compounds, leached from rocks and brought by meteorites. This primordial environment, which emerged over 3.5 billion years ago, was characterized by high temperatures, ranging from 50 to 100 degrees Celsius, facilitating numerous chemical reactions. The ocean was abundant in hydrogen sulfide, giving it a foul odor and making it acidic, with a pH likely below 7. It was also rich in metals such as iron, nickel, copper, and zinc, which were dissolved in the water. These elements interacted with simple organic compounds, forming complex molecules that could serve as precursors to life. The ocean functioned as a gigantic chemical laboratory, where various reactions occurred in different parts of the water due to convection and temperature gradients. Microscopic organisms like archaea and bacteria could thrive in this aggressive environment, using hydrogen sulfide and other compounds as energy sources. The color of the primordial ocean could range from murky green to brown, depending on the concentration of various minerals and organic substances. Its consistency was thick and viscous due to the high concentration of suspended particles and colloids. Unlike modern oceans, which typically have clear blue water, the early ocean was opaque, filled with suspended particles, giving it a murky appearance. It was not just a sea, it was a battlefield of chemical reactions where the first elements of life were formed. In such a nutrient-rich and energy-abundant environment, conditions arose for the emergence of the first protocells, which later became the foundation for the evolution of living organisms. These conditions fostered the development of complex biochemical processes that ultimately led to the formation of the first primitive life forms, such as cyanobacteria, which appeared around 2.5 billion years ago. These organisms began the process of photosynthesis, altering the composition of the atmosphere and oceans by releasing oxygen into the water and air. Thus, the early ocean became not only the birthplace of life, but also a catalyst for global changes on the planet. At the dawn of its history, Earth was covered in oceans, within which existed a substance known as the primary broth, rich in diverse chemical compounds and elements essential for the emergence of life. This broth can be imagined as a thick, nourishing soup, in which molecules with the potential to form more complex structures floated. Ancient oceans were teeming with organic substances, minerals, and salts that interacted with each other, creating conditions favorable for the birth of the first living organisms. Energy from lightning, ultraviolet radiation, and heat from hydrothermal vents played a crucial role in this process, stimulating chemical reactions in the primary broth. Lightning, for instance, could create high-energy conditions where simple molecules combined to form more complex ones, potentially leading to the formation of the first organic compounds. Ultraviolet radiation, penetrating the atmosphere, provided an additional energy source capable of breaking molecules apart and initiating new reactions. Hydrothermal vents, emerging from the ocean floor, released hot water rich in minerals, which could act as both a catalyst and a medium for the formation of the first organic molecules. Some researchers, such as the biochemist Stanley Miller, emphasized that such conditions could have led to the synthesis of amino acids, which are the building blocks of proteins essential for life. A key aspect of this concept is that the primary broth was not static. It was constantly changing and subject to influences, creating a dynamic environment conducive to the evolution of complex organic forms. This rich mixture of substances provided the foundation for the first cells, which began to develop and adapt to their surroundings. The primary broth, filled with the building blocks of life, served as the cradle for all future organisms on Earth. Over time, the emergence of simple life forms, such as bacteria, became possible due to the unique conditions created by this chemical environment. These organisms began a complex process of evolution that ultimately led to the diversity of life we observe today. Microbial ecosystems that arose in this broth had immense significance for the further development of the biosphere of our planet, shaping the atmosphere and ecosystems. The primary broth, therefore, became not only the birthplace of life, but also the driving force behind the biochemical processes that continue to influence our planet to this day. Hydrothermal sources on the ocean floor represent extraordinary underwater oases that form as a result of the interaction between seawater and hot magmatic rocks. These sources, also known as black smokers, are located on deep-sea ridges, such as the Mid-Atlantic Ridge, where tectonic plates spread apart, creating cracks in the ocean floor. The temperature of the water emitted from these cracks can reach values of around 300 degrees Celsius, and this water is rich in various minerals such as sulfur, copper, and zinc. When this hot water reaches the surface, it encounters cold seawater, creating unique conditions for the formation of mineral deposits that can reach heights of several meters. These formations, resembling peculiar sculptures, consist of metal sulfides and other elements that precipitate as the water cools. One of the most well-known types of mineral formations are black smokers, which are named for the fact that the water emitted from them contains small particles of black sulfide, giving it a characteristic color. Around these sources, a unique chemical environment is created by temperature and concentration gradients of various substances. For example, in the immediate vicinity of the sources, extreme conditions are observed, where temperature can change drastically over just a few meters, creating ideal conditions for the existence of specialized microbial communities that survive through chemosynthesis. These organisms convert the chemical energy contained in minerals into biomass, allowing them to exist in conditions where light does not penetrate. Scientists such as Dr. Edward Boyle from the University of Southern California are actively studying these sources, believing that it is here, in the protected conditions, that life on Earth may have originated. They claim that hydrothermal sources provided the necessary conditions for the formation of the first organic molecules, which became the basis for the appearance of complex life forms. In 1983, a significant discovery was made. A research expedition on board the submersible Alvin discovered unique ecosystems around black smokers, where giant worms, mollusks, and other organisms lived, relying on chemosynthetic bacteria. As a result of such research, it became clear that hydrothermal sources are not only ecosystems, but also key places for understanding the evolution of life on our planet. Most of them are located at depths of 1 to 3,000 meters, and their study requires the use of advanced technologies such as autonomous submersibles and remotely operated underwater vehicles. These unique conditions and adaptations make hydrothermal sources important objects of study for researchers seeking to unravel the mysteries of the origin and evolution of life on Earth. The formation of the first organic molecules in the ocean began around 4 billion years ago, when Earth's atmosphere was rich in simple gases such as hydrogen, methane, and ammonia. These gases dissolved in water, creating a primary ocean that served as an ideal environment for chemical reactions. Solar radiation, lightning, and volcanic activity provided conditions for the formation of more complex compounds. In this primary soup of simple molecules, reactions began that led to the formation of amino acids, the building blocks of proteins. Research conducted at Stanford University in 1981 showed that using electrical discharges in a mixture of simple gases could produce up to 20 different amino acids. These molecules then began to interact with each other, forming more complex structures like peptides. These peptides, consisting of chains of amino acids, exhibited the first signs of self-organization. Peptides could form more stable structures due to interactions between their chemical groups, serving as the foundation for the formation of proteins. At this stage, molecules with properties necessary for self-replication appeared, marking the first step from non-living matter to living organisms. In 1962, a study by scientists working with models of the origin of life showed that molecules like ribonucleic acid, RNA, which could store and transmit genetic information, could have emerged from these primary systems. RNA, with its ability to store and transmit genetic information, became a crucial element in the evolution of life. It is important to note that these processes occurred in conditions far from ideal, with constant changes in temperature and pH levels. However, it was precisely in these conditions that molecules began to form more complex structures, leading to the creation of protocells that could perform some functions reminiscent of life processes. This evolution from simple molecules to more complex systems capable of self-organization is a key moment in understanding the origin of life on Earth. During these reactions, not only amino acids and peptides, but also nucleotides were formed, serving as the basis for RNA and DNA. A discovery made in 2005 showed that molecules capable of autocatalytic reactions could have existed even earlier, opening new horizons for the study of processes that preceded the appearance of life. The study of self-replicating molecules reveals a fascinating world of chemical interactions in which specific structures can create copies of themselves using available elements and compounds from their surroundings. These molecules, in essence, are the first seeds of life, possessing a unique ability to self-replicate. They can capture atoms and molecules from their environment, manipulate them, and organize them into their own structures, thereby creating new instances of themselves. This phenomenon becomes possible due to chemical reactions that allow molecules to interact and share information, for example, through processes resembling copying. In this context, self-replicating molecules are not merely passive participants in chemical processes, but active players shaping the conditions for their own existence and spread. The nature of these molecules can vary, but their function remains the same. They create conditions for endless reproduction, setting the stage for further development. The transition from random chemical interactions to organized self-replication processes is a crucial step in the evolution of life, when chemistry begins to transition into biology. This shift not only increases the likelihood of life's emergence, but also sets parameters for future evolution, in which structural complexity and functional diversity will continue to grow. The appearance of such molecules marked the beginning of a new era, in which chemical reactions began to generate organized systems capable of adaptation, change, and, ultimately, natural selection. This laid the foundation for the formation of the first simplest organisms, which later evolved into more complex forms of life. Remarkably, such molecules could arise in a lifeless environment, far from ideal conditions, but it was their ability to self-replicate that allowed them not only to survive, but also to thrive. Over time, these molecules became the basis for more complex systems in which both chemical and biological principles were involved. Self-replicating molecules, therefore, became key players in the game of life, forming the foundation upon which all known organisms were later built. Research in this field continues to progress, and each new discovery brings us closer to understanding how life could have emerged from simple chemical structures. For instance, in 2005, scientists discovered that such molecules could have existed in conditions similar to those on early Earth, further confirming their significance in the evolutionary process. The formation of the first cellular membranes occurred due to natural processes involving molecules with unique properties. These molecules, known as phospholipids, have both hydrophobic and hydrophilic parts. Under the influence of physical and chemical factors, they began to aggregate into thin films, forming primitive structures similar to bubbles. These bubbles, known as liposomes, emerged in conditions similar to those that existed on early Earth and served as a protective barrier, separating the internal contents from the external environment. The age of such membranes can be estimated to be billions of years old, when conditions on the planet favored their formation. Scientists such as Jack Soper and his team conducted research showing that liposomes can form even in laboratory conditions if the necessary molecules are mixed in a suitable environment. These membranes did not simply exist in a static state. They could grow, divide, and fuse, creating more complex structures. For example, in the year 2000, a group of researchers from the University of Cambridge demonstrated that liposomes can combine to form larger membranes, increasing their surface area for chemical reactions. The appearance of such membranes was a significant step in evolution, as they allowed chemical reactions to be concentrated in a limited space. This significantly accelerated the metabolic process and contributed to the emergence of more complex forms of life. Thanks to this, molecules could interact with each other more effectively, leading to the formation of the first biological molecules, such as RNA. These cells, protected by a membrane, could more easily adapt to changes in the external environment. The formation of the first cellular membranes was not just a step towards the emergence of life, but also a catalyst for further evolution, allowing life to develop and become more complex over billions of years. It is important to note that without these membranes, life as we know it could not have existed. First prokaryotic cells, which appeared around 3.5 billion years ago, were simple single-celled organisms lacking a nucleus and complex internal structures. These microscopic creatures varied in size from 0 whole tenths to 0 whole tens of micrometers, making them visible only under a powerful microscope. Unlike more complex eukaryotic cells, prokaryotes had a simple form. Their genetic material was in the form of a circular DNA molecule, freely floating in the cytoplasm, without membrane-bound organelles. They lacked mitochondria, chloroplasts, or other specialized structures. Yet this did not hinder their development and adaptation to the conditions of their time. Prokaryotes employed various methods of nutrition: photosynthesis, chemosynthesis, and absorption of organic substances from the surrounding environment. For example, cyanobacteria, which appeared later, could use sunlight to synthesize organic compounds, releasing oxygen as a byproduct, which was a key factor in changing the Earth's atmosphere. These cells could reproduce by binary fission, allowing them to rapidly increase their numbers in favorable conditions. Prokaryotes exhibited remarkable resilience, enabling them to survive in the extreme conditions of early Earth. In hot springs, at the bottom of oceans, in icy deserts, and even in highly saline bodies of water. Some types of prokaryotes, known as extremophiles, could survive temperatures above 100 degrees Celsius or in acidic environments with a pH below 3. This ability to adapt to harsh conditions made them the primary organizers of the first ecosystems on the planet, contributing to the creation of conditions for more complex forms of life in the future. Prokaryotes, despite their simplicity, became the foundation of all life on Earth, providing the biosphere with the necessary resources for further evolutionary development. Their ability to exchange genetic material through horizontal gene transfer became an important mechanism, allowing them to quickly adapt to changes in the surrounding environment and evolve into new forms. Microbial communities consisting of prokaryotes formed mat layers on the ocean floor, which in turn created conditions for the formation of the first ecosystems. Scientific research shows that it was prokaryotes that served as catalysts for the further development of life, providing the necessary conditions for the appearance of more complex forms such as plants and animals. Stromatolites are among the oldest evidence of life on Earth, formed by colonies of microorganisms, primarily cyanobacteria, which created layered structures on the bottom of water bodies. These formations are essentially biological mats that gradually captured sedimentary particles, forming characteristic domes and columns that can reach several meters in height. The process of their formation is extremely slow. Stromatolites grow layer by layer, with each new layer added to the previous one at a minimal rate, reflecting the passage of time like the annual rings of trees. In some cases, this development can take thousands of years, making them natural time capsules that record changes in the surrounding environment and climate. These structures are not just random accumulations of minerals. They are complex ecosystems where microorganisms typically live in symbiosis with other organisms. Colonies of cyanobacteria, forming mat-like layers, release oxygen during photosynthesis, which in turn contributes to the accumulation of sediments such as carbonates. As a result, stromatolites become not only archaeological artifacts, but also important indicators of the ancient atmosphere and hydrosphere of the planet. Their study allows scientists to understand the conditions under which they formed and how these conditions changed over millions of years. Stromatolites can be found in the most diverse ecosystems, from salt lakes to freshwater lakes, highlighting their universality and adaptability to various living conditions. These structures are of interest not only to geologists, but also to biologists, as they help to study the evolution of life on Earth and the mechanisms that contributed to its development. Some modern research shows that stromatolites may also have significance in ecology, as they can serve as indicators of ecosystem health and sources of information about the state of the environment in the past. They form a kind of bridge between ancient forms of life and modern ecosystems, allowing us to better understand how life on our planet adapted and evolved over billions of years. These structures are, in turn, witnesses to the historical process, allowing us to look at the evolution of ecosystems that at some point in Earth's history played a key role in the planet's stability. Stromatolites serve not only as objects of scientific interest, but also as symbols of the longevity of life on Earth, embodying the resilience with which life continues to exist even in the most harsh conditions. They can have diverse shapes and sizes, from flat layered mats to tall columns, making them unique and diverse depending on the conditions of their formation. For example, in some cases, stromatolites can reach sizes comparable to the height of small buildings, emphasizing their significance as natural formations. Each layer of these structures contains information about what was happening in their habitat, creating a whole chronicle of changes that occurred on Earth over long epochs. Shark Bay in Australia is a unique bay with high salinity where one can observe living fossils, stromatolites. These bacterial colonies, primarily consisting of cyanobacteria, form structures identical to those that existed on Earth billions of years ago. The stromatolites of Shark Bay are rounded domes and columns that grow slowly, adding less than 1 millimetre per year. In this shallow bay with clear water and significant salinity, these ancient forms of life create remarkable formations visible even from the surface. Scientific research indicates that the stromatolites of Shark Bay are among the few places in the world where living samples of these structures can be observed, which were once widespread. Studies conducted in 2008 by a group of scientists led by Dr. Greg Jordan showed that these stromatolites provide a unique opportunity to study early life on Earth and its evolution. They serve as a sort of time capsule, allowing scientists to look back into the distant past of our planet and understand how living conditions have changed over billions of years. Stromatolites form as a result of complex interactions between bacteria and minerals, leading to the precipitation of limestone. These bacteria absorb carbon dioxide and release oxygen, significantly influencing the formation of Earth's atmosphere as the oxygen level began to rise. In Shark Bay, stromatolites can reach a diameter of up to 10 meters and a height of up to 2 meters. Their study is important not only for understanding the history of life on Earth, but also for assessing the changes in ecosystems that are occurring today. The water in the bay, rich in nutrients, promotes the growth of stromatolites, but changes in climate and anthropogenic factors threaten their existence. 80% of the stromatolites in Shark Bay are within the boundaries of a national park established in 1988 to protect these unique formations. This makes Shark Bay not only a natural reserve, but also a significant research site for scientists from around the world who study the oldest forms of life on our planet. Photosynthesis is a remarkable process that allows living organisms to convert solar energy into chemical energy. It emerged approximately 3.5 billion years ago and became the foundation for life on Earth. This process can be imagined as a kind of factory where sunlight serves as the energy source, and simple substances like carbon dioxide and water are the raw materials for producing nutrients. Molecules of chlorophyll, found in plants and some bacteria, play a crucial role in this process. They capture sunlight, using it to split water into oxygen and hydrogen. This hydrogen then combines with carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, resulting in the formation of carbohydrates that serve as a source of energy for organisms. The appearance of photosynthesis was one of the greatest evolutionary breakthroughs. Thanks to it, the Earth's atmosphere became filled with oxygen, paving the way for the development of more complex forms of life. Around 2.5 billion years ago, when photosynthetic microorganisms began actively producing oxygen, its level in the atmosphere started to rise. This led to the Great Oxidation Event, which altered the structure of life on the planet. Sunlight captured by plants not only nourishes them, but also forms the basis for the entire food chain. Without photosynthesis, neither animals nor humans could exist, as all life depends on the energy obtained from this process. For example, in the oceans, phytoplankton, which use photosynthesis, produces about half of all the oxygen on Earth. Energy stored in carbohydrates is then passed through food chains, supporting the existence of various ecosystems. This process became the basis for the creation of the biosphere, in which living organisms evolved, adapted, and developed. As a result of photosynthesis, not only plants, but also numerous other organisms that use oxygen for respiration emerged. The entire ecosystem became dependent on this unique mechanism, which in turn became a subject of study for scientists seeking to understand its details. Today, scientists are exploring the potential applications of photosynthesis in energy. The development of technologies that can mimic photosynthesis could lead to the creation of new energy sources, which is particularly relevant in the face of global environmental problems. An example of this is the development of artificial leaves that can convert solar energy into hydrogen or other fuels. It is interesting to note that photosynthesis is not static. It continues to evolve. Different organisms use various methods to optimize this process depending on the conditions of their environment. For example, some plants have adapted to live in arid conditions and possess special mechanisms that allow them to use water more efficiently. Thus, photosynthesis is not just a chemical process. It is the foundation of all life on Earth, a mechanism that changed the atmosphere and became a catalyst for the appearance of the diversity of living organisms, from simple organisms to complex ecosystems. Each year, photosynthetic organisms produce around 130 billion tons of carbon dioxide, converting it into organic matter, which is equivalent to approximately 36 billion tons of carbon. Cyanobacteria, also known as blue-green algae, are some of the oldest photosynthesizing organisms on Earth, appearing around 3.5 billion years ago. These tiny microorganisms learned to use solar energy to synthesize organic compounds from carbon dioxide and water, releasing oxygen as a byproduct. It was thanks to cyanobacteria that oxygen began to accumulate in Earth's atmosphere, marking a pivotal moment in the history of life on the planet. They form extensive colonies that color shallow waters in vivid blue-green hues, creating true biological carpets. These colonies can survive in a wide range of conditions, from the heat of deserts to the depths of oceans. For instance, cyanobacteria living in Iceland's hot springs can withstand temperatures up to 110 degrees Celsius. Through the process of photosynthesis, cyanobacteria convert around 30% of the world's carbon dioxide into oxygen, which is released into the atmosphere. This led to what is known as the oxygenation event, approximately 2.5 billion years ago. This event dramatically altered the composition of the atmosphere, making it more suitable for the life of aerobic organisms. The increase in oxygen in the atmosphere created conditions for the emergence of more complex life forms, including multicellular organisms. One striking example of cyanobacteria is the genus Nostoc, which forms gelatinous colonies in symbiosis with plants, providing them with essential nutrients. Cyanobacteria also have the ability to fix atmospheric nitrogen, making them crucial for ecosystems, especially in environments where nutrient content is limited. Their metabolism not only maintains the carbon balance in the atmosphere, but also serves as the basis for soil formation as they decompose organic matter. The study of these microorganisms is conducted worldwide, including research by a group from the University of California, San Diego, which explores the potential use of cyanobacteria in biotechnology for creating sustainable energy sources. Cyanobacteria are not just ancient organisms. They are the pioneers of life on Earth, altering its atmosphere and ecosystems. Their impact on Earth's history is undeniable and continues to be felt to this day. The oxygen catastrophe, also known as the oxygen revolution, is one of the most significant events in the history of our planet. This dramatic change in the chemistry of the atmosphere and oceans began with the accumulation of oxygen produced by cyanobacteria during photosynthesis. As a result, the level of oxygen in the atmosphere began to rise, creating conditions unsuitable for most of the organisms that existed at the time. These organisms, such as bacteria and archaea, lived in anoxic environments and lacked protective mechanisms against this gas. The situation became paradoxical. Oxygen, which is now vital for most forms of life, was deadly to many ancient organisms. Evolution, as a harsh mistress, did not leave a chance for those who did not adapt to the new conditions. Former anoxic organisms, such as methanogenic archaea, began to die in massive numbers. This led to significant changes in ecosystems. Oceans, which were previously saturated with carbon dioxide and lacked oxygen, began to fill with this gas, transforming into vast oxygen reservoirs. This process not only changed life on land, but also deeply affected marine ecosystems. The appearance of oxygen led to the emergence of new forms of life, such as multicellular algae, which soon became the basis for more complex organisms. Microscopic organisms, which were pioneers in centuries when oxygen was scarce, began to disappear, giving way to those who could survive in the new conditions. In this context, oxygen became not just a gas, but a catalyst for evolutionary changes, fundamentally altering life on Earth. Ultimately, the oxygen catastrophe led to the appearance of complex forms of life, including the first animals capable of developing in an oxygen-rich environment. This transition became foundational for the formation of future ecosystems and the biosphere as a whole. Oxygen, which was once a poison, became the primary element enabling the development of complex life forms, including us, humans. In the end, it was this gas, produced by microscopic cyanobacteria, that became the foundation for all multicellular beings. During the oxygen catastrophe that occurred approximately 2.5 billion years ago, the oceans underwent significant changes associated with the oxidation of iron. At that time, seawater contained a large amount of dissolved iron, which upon reacting with oxygen, formed iron oxides. This oxidation process took place in waters that were previously green and rich in organic matter. But as oxygen accumulated, they began to change. Dissolved iron, reacting with oxygen, transformed into iron oxides, which gradually settled to the bottom of the oceans, forming characteristic sedimentary layers. These deposits, often referred to as banded iron formations, consisted of red-striped layers that indicated high iron and oxide content in the water. The appearance of such formations was made possible by the fact that oxidation occurred under conditions where oxygen was already beginning to fill the oceans. These sediments accumulated on the ocean floor, creating powerful layers that, through geological processes, eventually transformed into iron ores, such as brown iron ore and magnetite. As the concentration of oxygen increased, the oceans lost their greenish and greyish hue, transitioning to the blue colour we observe today. This was due to the fact that iron oxidation led to a decrease in the concentration of other dissolved substances that gave the water a murky appearance. Gradually, over millions of years, the oceans became increasingly transparent, creating conditions for the development of new forms of life, such as plankton and other organisms that require sunlight. The banded iron formations that have survived to this day are important geological evidence of this epoch, with their age ranging from 2.5 to 2 billion years. These sedimentary layers can be seen in places such as Banders on Canadian territory and formations in Australia, which serve as indicators of changes in the chemical composition of seawater during the period when oxygen began to dominate the atmosphere. An oxygen-rich atmosphere, which emerged approximately 2.5 billion years ago, acted as a catalyst for evolutionary changes in life on Earth. Some organisms, such as anaerobic bacteria, were forced to develop protective mechanisms against the toxic effects of oxygen, which in large quantities can cause oxidative stress. This manifested in the formation of special antioxidants such as superoxide dismutase and catalase, which protected cells from damage caused by reactive oxygen species. At the same time, other organisms, such as cyanobacteria, adapted to the new conditions, learning to use oxygen in their metabolic processes. They began to perform photosynthesis, converting solar energy into chemical energy, which allowed them to produce organic compounds and release oxygen as a byproduct. This process became the primary source of oxygen in the atmosphere and paved the way for the emergence of new forms of life. During this time, there was a true adaptive radiation, when complex multicellular organisms, such as algae and early animals, capable of efficiently using oxygen for respiration and energy production, arose. An example of this is early eukaryotes, which, possessing mitochondria, could produce significantly more energy compared to anaerobic organisms. This enabled the evolution of more complex forms of life, such as arthropods and chordates, which later became dominant in ecosystems. As a result, adaptation to the oxygen-rich atmosphere contributed to the emergence of new ecosystems and the diversity of life that we observe today. The appearance of the first multicellular organisms, such as trilobites around 500 million years ago, became possible due to this adaptation, which in turn led to the formation of complex food chains and diverse biomes. Oxygen, previously perceived as a threat, became the basis for the development of life, providing the energy foundation for complex metabolic processes. Eukaryotic cells represent a more complex structure compared to prokaryotic cells, which form bacteria and archaea. This type of cell emerged approximately 1 billion years ago and became the foundation for all multicellular organisms. Eukaryotic cells can be likened to miniature cities, where each factory and control center performs specialized functions necessary for maintaining life. Within these cells lies the nucleus, which can be compared to a city hall. It is here that the genetic material, DNA, containing instructions for building and functioning of the cell, is stored. Just as in a city with various districts, in an eukaryotic cell, there are different internal structures, each responsible for its own tasks. For example, some factories synthesize proteins, others generate energy, and others transport substances. This complex organization allowed eukaryotes to adapt to various environmental conditions, creating the possibility for the emergence of complex multicellular organisms such as plants, animals, and fungi. The revolutionary development of eukaryotic cells marked a turning point in the evolution of life on Earth, as they laid the foundation for the diversity of life forms with which we are familiar today. Unlike their predecessors, eukaryotes possess more complex regulatory and interaction mechanisms, enabling them to develop and adapt to changes in ecosystems. Eukaryotes became the basis for the emergence of complex organisms such as dinosaurs and mammals, including humans. This new cellular organization paved the way for the creation of highly developed systems that can interact, compete, and survive in changing planetary conditions. Considering all this, it is impossible to underestimate the importance of eukaryotes in the history of life on Earth, as they became the foundation for all higher forms of life that we know. The evolution of eukaryotic cells led to the emergence of new survival and reproduction strategies that allowed them to occupy various ecological niches. For example, photosynthetic eukaryotes such as plants provide oxygen for the atmosphere, while predatory organisms control the populations of their prey. Eukaryotes are diverse and can be found in various forms, from single-celled algae to complex mammals. This complex and interconnected cellular structure is the basis for understanding biological processes that occur on Earth. Eukaryotes not only became the foundation for all multicellular forms of life, but also created conditions for the emergence of complex ecosystems where continuous interaction between various organisms occurs. Considering all these aspects, it is important to note that eukaryotes continue to evolve and adapt to new conditions, ensuring the sustainability of life on our planet. Eukaryotic cells have sizes ranging from tenths of a micrometer to several millimeters, making them the most diverse and complex systems existing in living nature. The theory of endosymbiosis offers an intriguing explanation for the origin of mitochondria, key organelles that provide cells with energy. According to this theory, around 1.5 billion years ago, more primitive eukaryotic cells engulfed free-floating aerobic bacteria that were capable of efficiently using oxygen. These bacteria, such as alpha proteobacteria, possessed unique metabolic abilities that allowed them to produce ATP, the primary fuel for cellular activity. Instead of digesting these bacteria, the host cells found a way to retain them, forming a unique symbiotic union. This process can be visualized as a captivating alliance between two organisms, where each side brings its strengths to the table. The bacteria provide the cells with energy, while the cells offer protection and a stable environment. Such a symbiosis became the foundation for the emergence of complex multicellular organisms that we see today. Mitochondria, remaining within cells, retained their own DNA, which differs from the nuclear DNA of eukaryotes and closely resembles the genetic material of prokaryotic bacteria. This indicates that mitochondria have a bacterial origin and trace their lineage back to ancient organisms that once existed on the primordial Earth. They possess circular DNA similar to that found in modern bacteria. And this discovery confirms that mitochondria are not merely energy stations, but descendants of those very bacteria that once became part of a more complex cellular structure. This relationship between cells and their mitochondria is an example of how two different worlds can unite to create something greater than the sum of their parts. Scientific research, such as the work of Professor Linda Griffin in 2012, shows that mitochondria also possess their own division mechanisms that resemble bacterial division, further underscoring their unique nature. Cells containing mitochondria became more efficient in utilizing oxygen and, consequently, in producing energy, which drove the evolution of more complex forms of life. While simple organisms like bacteria continue to exist in their original form, more complex organisms use this ancient cooperation to sustain their vital functions. Interestingly, mitochondria also participate in other vital processes, such as regulating cellular metabolism and apoptosis, making them key players in the cellular life cycle. Ultimately, the symbiosis that occurred billions of years ago laid the foundation for complex life on Earth, and mitochondria continue to play their role in providing cells with energy to this day. During the course of evolution on Earth, another pivotal moment occurred: the appearance of chloroplasts, which were the result of an endosymbiotic event. Around 1 billion years ago, when eukaryotic cells already existed on the planet, they began to engulf photosynthesizing cyanobacteria. These single-celled organisms, capable of using sunlight to produce energy, were not just a snack for larger cells, but began to live inside them, transforming into their internal solar batteries. This cooperation became the foundation for a new level of life, as eukaryotes gained the ability to directly use solar energy for the synthesis of organic compounds. It is important to note that not all cyanobacteria were engulfed, but those that became chloroplasts provided cells with carbohydrates and oxygen. Thus, around 80 million years ago, as a result of this mutually beneficial symbiosis, algae and then all plants began to emerge. These organisms, using chloroplasts, became the basis for most ecosystems on Earth, providing food and oxygen for other living beings. Algae, such as single-celled chloroplasts and multicellular laminaria, play a critical role in aquatic ecosystems, while terrestrial plants provide the biosphere with oxygen and food. Chloroplasts, retaining the genetic information of their cyanobacterial ancestors, continue to perform their function in plant cells, synthesizing glucose during photosynthesis. There are numerous studies confirming that chloroplasts in plant cells have their own DNA, similar to the DNA of cyanobacteria, which serves as evidence of their symbiotic origin. For example, in laboratory conditions, scientists from the University of Texas at Austin, under the leadership of Dr. Eric Gilbert, conducted research showing how chloroplasts evolved, adapting to the conditions of life inside eukaryotic cells. This endosymbiotic event, which occurred billions of years ago, became the basis for the emergence of modern ecosystems, among which plants hold a dominant position. Ultimately, it is the ability of cells to photosynthesize, provided by chloroplasts, that led to the formation of an oxygen-rich atmosphere and the creation of conditions necessary for the development of complex life on the planet. Chloroplasts, as internal solar batteries, continue to support life on Earth by producing oxygen and organic compounds, making them indispensable for ecosystems. Multicellularity represents one of the most significant steps in biological evolution, occurring more than 1 billion years ago. This process can be envisioned as a revolutionary union of individual cells that, by relinquishing their individuality, began to work together to create more complex organisms. In the initial stages, when cells coalesced into colonies, they did not have specialized functions and performed the same tasks. However, over time, the need for functional diversification arose through natural selection, leading to the formation of multicellular organisms with differentiated tissues. This process of specialization can be compared to how people in human society unite into groups, where each person performs a unique role, thereby enhancing the overall efficiency of the group. In multicellular organisms, cells, having abandoned independent existence, began to focus on specific functions. Some became responsible for movement, others for metabolism, and still others for protection. This allowed for a significant increase in the efficiency of resource use, as specialized cells could more effectively perform their tasks. For example, in multicellular organisms like plants, chloroplast cells carry out photosynthesis, while other cells handle the transport of water and nutrients. Additionally, multicellular organisms gained advantages in protecting themselves from hostile environmental conditions. The cohesion of cells allows for the formation of protective tissues that act as a barrier against pathogens and adverse factors. Thus, multicellularity not only increases the size of the organism, but also significantly enhances its survival and adaptive capabilities. An example of this is sea stars, which possess the ability to regenerate lost parts due to specialized cells responsible for restoration. It is also worth noting that multicellular organisms typically have more complex interaction systems, such as nervous and hormonal systems, which enable them to respond to changes in the environment more quickly and accurately. As a result, multicellularity opened new horizons for the diversity of life on Earth, laying the foundation for the emergence of complex ecosystems. Furthermore, this organization of cells allowed for the development of various forms of life, from simple multicellular algae to complex mammals. This transition to multicellularity became possible due to mutations in genes responsible for cellular communication and development, which in turn allowed cells to effectively coordinate their actions. Research shows that precisely such changes in the genetic code contributed to the formation of the first multicellular organisms that appeared on our planet approximately 600 million years ago. Multicellularity opened new possibilities for adaptation to various conditions, including the ability to colonize land, which became an important milestone in the history of life on Earth. The Ediacaran biota, which existed approximately from 630 to 500 million years ago, represents a unique stage in the history of life on Earth. These were the first complex multicellular organisms that inhabited ancient oceans, and their way of life was completely unlike that of modern animals. For example, creatures like Dickinsonia and Kimberella had soft bodies without a hard skeleton and often resembled discs or feathers. Dickinsonia, which could reach a length of up to 1 meter, had a characteristic shape that resembled an elongated flat oval with segmented stripes, while Kimberella could reach a length of up to 30 centimeters and had oval shapes with characteristic grooves on the surface, indicating its slow but mobile nature. These organisms led a sedentary life on the seafloor where they slowly moved, absorbing nutrients from water or sediment. Ediacarians did not possess complex organ systems like modern animals, but their bodies were covered with soft tissues that could effectively utilize surrounding resources. Research shows that they likely used processes similar to filtration to extract nutrients from water, placing them in the same category as some modern marine organisms like sponges. Some of these creatures may have had symbiotic relationships with microscopic algae, allowing them to obtain additional energy through photosynthesis. The enigma of the Ediacaran biota lies in the fact that many of them are difficult to classify into known groups of organisms. For instance, some researchers suggest that these creatures may be the ancestors of modern jellyfish, while others see them as early forms of worms. These theories are based on fossils found in places like Australia and Russia, where layers of rock containing traces of Ediacarians have been preserved in ideal conditions. The discovery in the Ediacara region of Australia, in particular, is a significant piece of evidence for the existence of these organisms, and it is from here that the entire period is named. These ancient creatures lacked a hard exoskeleton, and their soft bodies quickly decomposed after death, making each fossil discovery important for understanding their diversity and way of life. Ediacarians could have varied shapes and sizes, from small, almost invisible creatures to large forms reaching a length of a metre. Their strange shapes and appearance challenged not only their classification, but also how they interacted with their environment. Scientists still debate how these organisms reproduced and what their ecological niches were. Fossils show that the Ediacaran biota could not have existed in isolation and were part of a complex ecosystem where they coexisted with other marine organisms such as simple organisms and algae. These organisms, despite their simplicity, played a crucial role in preparing the ground for more complex forms of life that would appear later. The Ediacaran biota left behind many questions that scientists are still trying to answer by studying their fossils and attempting to understand how these unusual creatures lived in the ancient oceans. An important discovery is that some of these organisms could survive even in conditions of low oxygen content, indicating their adaptation to changing environmental conditions. The Cambrian explosion, which occurred around 500 million years ago, was a turning point in Earth's history when life on the planet rapidly increased its diversity. Over a relatively short period of just 20 million years, groups of animals began to appear in the oceans that became the ancestors of most modern species. During this time, the oceans teemed with a multitude of creatures, each possessing unique adaptations. Some, like trilobites, had complex shells that protected them from predators, while others, like ostracods, developed cunning hunting strategies using claws and jaws. A key aspect of the Cambrian explosion is that it was during this period that the evolution of hard exoskeletons began, providing protection and support for these organisms, allowing them to survive in an aggressive environment. Scientists such as David E. Grimaldi from Cambridge University note that during the Cambrian explosion, numerous new types of animals appeared, including the first chordates and arthropods. This event was a kind of natural experiment where various forms of life tested new survival strategies, such as filter feeding, active hunting, or symbiotic relationships. According to paleontologists, more than 500 new species appeared during this time, representing an unprecedented increase in biomass in the oceans. Notable discoveries from this period include fossils from the Burgess Shale Formation in Canada, where well-preserved remains of animals like Canadinia and Opabinia were found, displaying unusual morphological features. These fossils demonstrate how quickly organisms adapted to various ecological niches, leading to the emergence of new forms that later became the basis for most modern animal groups. It is also worth noting that during this time, complex behaviors such as hunting and predator avoidance began to emerge, indicating the development of neural systems and learning abilities. Additionally, significant climate changes occurred during this period, which may have contributed to an increase in oxygen levels in the oceans, further promoting the growth and diversity of marine life. The Cambrian explosion was not just an increase in the number of species, but a true revolution in the marine ecosystem, as evolution, like a skilled artist, began to paint the palette of life on Earth. Each new discovery in paleontology underscores the importance of this period, when life on the planet took its most significant step forward, and since then, life has continued to evolve, enriching the biosphere with new forms and survival strategies. As a result of the Cambrian explosion, the first organisms with hard shells and complex structures appeared in the oceans, laying the foundation for the further evolution of all multicellular animals. Burgess Shale is a unique geological formation located in the Canadian Rocky Mountains, dating back approximately 500 million years to the early Cambrian period. This deposit has provided a remarkable window into Cambrian life, preserving not only the hard parts of organisms, but also their soft tissues, which is extremely rare in paleontology. The conditions that formed these shales in an ancient ocean have preserved entire ecosystems. For example, among the fossils found here are such creatures as Marella, which had a body up to 30 centimeters long and resembled a combination of a worm and a crab. Its soft tissues, including eyes and internal organs, are preserved in remarkable detail. The Burgess Shale also contains famous trilobites like Olenoides, which exhibit complex structures and a variety of forms, including different types of shells and eyes. Some specimens reach lengths of up to 40 centimeters, making them among the largest of this class. No less intriguing are the findings of creatures like Hallucigenia, which had bizarre, unique body forms with an elongated trunk and tentacles, challenging our conventional notions of how ancient organisms might have looked. Additionally, fossils resembling modern sea stars, but with numerous tentacles and unusual structures, have been discovered. These finds have revolutionized our understanding of early animal evolution, raising questions about how organisms could develop and adapt to their environments. The Burgess Shale has provided scientists with the opportunity to study the ancestors of modern animals and understand how differentiation occurred within the kingdom of living organisms. 80% of all known species from this period were found here, making the Burgess Shale one of the most significant paleontological deposits in the world. Paleontologists like David Evans and other researchers continue to study these fossils to unravel the mysteries of the ancient world. The unique conditions under which the Burgess Shale formed allow us to consider it a kind of temporal capsule, preserving not only the forms of life, but also their ecological interactions. This rich layer of fossils has formed the basis for new theories on the origin and development of multicellular organisms, and their study continues to this day, opening new horizons in our understanding of our planet and its history. The Paleozoic era spans a period from 600 million to 250 million years ago and is a pivotal moment in Earth's history, laying the foundation for modern biodiversity. This time is marked by the gradual complexity of ecosystems as life on the planet developed at an astonishing pace. During this period, new ecological niches emerged, providing a variety of life forms and their adaptation to the surrounding environment. Evolutionary innovations, such as the development of a hard skeleton in multicellular organisms, allowed them to occupy diverse ecosystems, from ocean depths to coastal areas. For instance, the first coral reefs began to form, becoming homes to numerous marine creatures and creating complex ecosystems that supported new species. A significant step was the colonization of land. Plants, starting with simple mosses, gradually adapted to terrestrial conditions, leading to the formation of new habits and ecosystems. The appearance of the first terrestrial animals, such as early amphibians, was a turning point in evolutionary history, as they became the first vertebrates to leave the water. These creatures adapted to new conditions, developing various mechanisms for breathing air and moving on land. The Paleozoic era signifies the transition from marine to terrestrial evolution, where life was no longer confined to the ocean, but rapidly colonized new horizons. During this period, there were also mass extinctions that opened new opportunities for evolution, allowing more resilient and adapted organisms to occupy the vacant ecological niches. The appearance of the first seed-bearing plants helped to establish life on land and became the basis for future forests, which altered the climate and living conditions on the planet. As a result, the Paleozoic era not only laid the groundwork for modern biodiversity, but also served as a stage for unprecedented changes that shaped the evolution of life on Earth. By 250 million years ago, life on the planet had taken on many forms, from simple marine organisms to complex terrestrial ecosystems, underscoring the significance of this time in the context of evolutionary history. The Silurian period, which spanned from 431 to 440 million years ago, marked a significant milestone in the evolution of life on Earth. It was during this time that the first terrestrial plants began to appear in coastal zones. These primitive organisms, such as mesophytes and simple moss-like forms, lacked roots in the conventional sense and were merely low-growing green stems rising above the wet soil, acting as the vanguard of the great conquest of land. They could reach heights of only a few centimeters, but despite their modest size, played a critical role in ecosystems. In conditions where the soil was not yet prepared for deep roots, these plants adapted to the new environment by developing mechanisms that allowed them to survive on land. To prevent desiccation, plants evolved a waxy cuticle that protected them from water loss. The complex structure of their cells also helped support their bodies against the force of gravity, which was particularly important in environments that could be extremely harsh. The spores they produced for reproduction did not require water, as was the case with aquatic plants, and could be dispersed by wind over significant distances. This was a crucial step in the colonization of land and the establishment of a new type of ecosystem where terrestrial organisms could coexist with marine ones. The first terrestrial plants also served as the foundation for the formation of soil, contributing to the further diversity of flora and fauna. Their appearance altered the dynamics of ecosystems, creating new niches for other organisms and providing conditions for further evolution. These plants paved the way for complex ecosystems that later filled forests, fields, and meadows, forever changing the landscape of Earth. The importance of these first terrestrial plants is underscored by the fact that they were the predecessors of modern mosses, ferns, and even more complex seed-bearing plants. The first flora of land represented a complex array of life forms that were attuned to constant changes in their environment, and their survival was made possible by the numerous adaptations they developed in response to new challenges. Scientific research conducted by such scientists as James L. K. Snow in the early 20th century confirmed that it was during this period that plants began to actively develop mechanisms for sustainable existence on land. The Devonian period, which lasted approximately from 440 to 380 million years ago, is often referred to as the Age of Fish for good reason. During this time, ancient oceans became thriving habitats for a wide variety of fish species that began to actively develop and evolve. One of the earliest groups were jawless fish, such as the Linnea and Osteosteus, which inhabited shallow waters and used their suction cups for feeding. Their lack of jaws was compensated for by powerful bony plates that protected them from predators. At the same time, armored fish like acanthides emerged, featuring bony plates and long gills that allowed them to adapt to various living conditions. The Devonian period also saw the development of cartilaginous fish, including ancestors of modern sharks and rays, which hunted in open waters teeming with life. Bony fish, which became dominant, represented a vast class with a wide range of forms and sizes, from small, brightly coloured fish that communicated with each other to giant predators like the dinodons and plesiosaurs with powerful jaws capable of tearing apart their prey. These inhabitants of ancient water bodies not only actively hunted, but also became prey for larger predators. Ancient coral reefs formed during this period, creating ecosystems teeming with colourful marine life, from simple organisms to complex ones like mollusks and crustaceans that found shelter among coral structures. These reefs served as homes and protection for young fish, creating unique conditions for the reproduction and development of various species. At the same time, the deep waters of Devonian oceans harboured strange, bioluminescent predators like dipnoans and other ancient species that used bioluminescence for hunting in the dark. The Devonian period marked significant changes in ecosystems as fish began to occupy new niches, leading to the diversity we observe in the modern world. Adaptations such as the development of fins and barbels, as well as different breathing methods, allowed them to successfully survive in changing climates and ecosystems. Scientific research conducted by paleontologists such as David J. Gibbs in the late 20th century revealed that the Devonian period was a pivotal moment in the evolution of fish, as it was during this time that the main groups that would persist for millions of years were formed. During the Devonian period, which lasted from around 400 to 360 million years ago, the first tetrapods, which are the ancestors of modern land vertebrates, began to appear on Earth. One of the most famous transitional creatures of this time is Tiktaalik, discovered in 2006 by a team of paleontologists led by Neil Shubin in the Canadian province of Nunavut. Tiktaalik possessed unique characteristics. It had gills like a fish, but also lungs, allowing it to breathe air in shallow water areas. This creature could reach up to 2.5 meters in length and had powerful fins that gradually transformed into primitive limbs capable of supporting its weight on land. This allowed it to move through marshy coastal zones and drying up water bodies, where competition for resources became increasingly intense. Acanthostega, another important link in evolution, lived slightly later, around 380 million years ago. Acanthostega had more developed limbs that allowed it to move on land, but it still retained gills for breathing underwater. These transitional forms adapted to new conditions, where dry periods forced them to leave the water in search of food or shelter. Marshy coastal zones, abundant in vegetation and small water bodies, became an ideal habitat for these creatures. The appearance of four-limbed limbs gave them an evolutionary advantage over competitors, facilitating the colonization of new ecological niches. Additionally, their ability to survive both in water and on land allowed them to adapt to diverse conditions resulting from climate changes, such as droughts. These organisms were key in the transition from aquatic to terrestrial life, as they became the first step towards complete land conquest. The weight of these animals could reach up to 100 kilograms, requiring significant effort to move on land. Paleontological research shows that it was during this time that the anatomical structures necessary for the subsequent successful existence of terrestrial vertebrates began to form. Carboniferous forests, which existed approximately 300 million years ago, were unique ecosystems that covered vast territories. These wet, swampy forests were home to giant ferns and horsetails that towered over the ground, forming a green canopy up to 30 meters high. Unlike modern forests, Carboniferous forests lacked flowering plants or grasses. Instead, they were dominated by spore-bearing plants that created a distinctive landscape. Such forests were unlike anything we are familiar with today, and the world seemed alien and mysterious. The tall stems of ferns, reaching a diameter of around 30 centimeters, created dense shade, making it difficult for light to penetrate to the ground. Beneath their canopy grew mosses and lichens, and conditions were created for the formation of peat bogs, which later became the basis for coal formation. These forests were not only exotic in appearance, but also in their ecosystem functioning. Various organisms, such as insects and small vertebrates, adapted to the unique conditions, including high humidity and lack of sunlight at ground level. During the Carboniferous period, which lasted around 80 million years, significant climate changes occurred on the planet. These forests played a crucial role in the global carbon cycle, as photosynthesizing plants absorbed carbon dioxide and released oxygen, contributing to the formation of an oxygen-rich atmosphere necessary for the survival of more complex life forms. As a result, extensive coal deposits were formed, which became the foundation for the coal industry in the 19th and 20th centuries. The coal formed from the remains of vegetation contained a significant amount of carbon, making it a valuable resource for human civilization. Scientific research shows that it was during this period that key changes in ecosystems occurred, paving the way for the appearance of flowering plants and more complex ecosystems in the future. These forests, with their unique flora and fauna, were one of the most important stages in the evolution of nature, laying the groundwork for all modern forest ecosystems. The tall ferns and horsetails that made up the majority of the vegetation not only shaped the landscape, but also created conditions for the existence of numerous organisms, highlighting their role in the ecosystem. As a result, we see how Carboniferous forests became a significant stage in the formation of the biosphere of our planet, and their disappearance paved the way for new forms of life and plants that now populate our forests. These forests, which have disappeared from the face of the earth, left behind a valuable legacy in the form of coal deposits, which continue to influence the economy and ecosystems. Giant insects of the Carboniferous period were astonishing creatures that captivated the imagination with their size and diversity. One of the most impressive representatives of this time were dragonflies, with wingspans reaching up to 70 centimeters. These predators soared over ancient swamps, hunting smaller insects and even small vertebrates. Their powerful wings allowed them to achieve high speeds, making them formidable hunters in the ecosystem of the time. During this period, there were also millipedes that grew to lengths of more than 2 meters. These creatures, which inhabited the understory, were not only larger than their modern counterparts, but also had more complex body structures, enabling them to survive in conditions of high humidity and heat. Giant scorpions, which lived in the coal forests, could reach lengths of up to 40 centimeters and hunt small reptiles. They used their powerful pincers and venomous stingers to capture prey. Spiders, some of which reached the size of a human hand, also inhabited this world. Their long legs and enormous webs allowed them to catch insects that could not escape their deft nets. The gigantism of these arthropods was possible due to the high oxygen content in the atmosphere, which reached around 30%, compared to the current level of about 21%. This facilitated the development of large sizes and active metabolism in insects, making them not only larger, but also more aggressive. The high level of oxygen, combined with the warm climatic conditions of the time, created ideal conditions for the existence of these giants. For example, fossil remains of enormous dragonflies, which are related to modern ones but significantly larger, have been found in some places. These creatures did not just survive, they dominated their ecosystems, forming food chains and influencing the surrounding environment. In essence, the Carboniferous period was an era when nature experimented with sizes and forms of life, and the results of this experiment continue to amaze scientists and history enthusiasts. Each of these giants, from dragonflies to scorpions, was part of a complex ecosystem where they not only existed but also actively interacted with other species, leaving a deep mark on the history of life on Earth. Ultimately, these remarkable creatures, like living monuments, remind us of how greatly life on the planet has changed over millions of years. The formation of coal seams is the result of long geological processes in which ancient plants played a key role, inhabiting our planet for hundreds of millions of years. During the Carbon period, which lasted from 360 to 290 million years ago, vast forests covered extensive territories, creating ideal conditions for the accumulation of organic matter. After trees and other plants died, their remains fell into bogs and flooded lowlands. In these conditions, due to high humidity and lack of oxygen, decomposition was slow, allowing significant volumes of plant material to be preserved. This process can be imagined as a multi-layered cake, where each layer represents the accumulation of plant remains that gradually settle at the bottom of the bogs. Over time, under the pressure of overlying sediment layers, these plant remains begin to transform into peat. This transitional stage can take millions of years, during which peat, in turn, undergoes thermal and chemical changes, transforming into coal. This metamorphosis process includes several stages. Initially, brown coal forms, which over time, under the influence of temperature and pressure, transforms into coal. The coal mines we see today are essentially time machines, allowing us to extract and use solar energy stored by plants over millions of years. For example, in Russia, in Kuzbass, coal deposits over 300 million years old preserve traces of ancient forests that were once part of ecosystems similar to modern tropical forests. There are also indications that in some European regions, such as Germany, coal formed from the remains of conifers and ferns, which in conditions of low oxygen content formed rich coal deposits. This energy formation not only contains carbon, but also important elements such as hydrogen and oxygen, which are the main components of organic compounds. Thus, the coal we mine contains not only geological history, but also ancient solar energy accumulated over millions of years. Currently, there are more than 800 coal mines worldwide that extract coal for energy needs, and this number continues to grow despite the transition to alternative energy sources. The Permian extinction occurred around 250 million years ago and was the greatest mass extinction in Earth's history, wiping out approximately 97% of all marine and 72% of all terrestrial species. This event was a true catastrophe for the planet's ecosystems, as life seemed to teeter on the brink of total collapse. Within a very short period, estimated to have taken from several thousand to several million years, the biosphere faced the threat of complete annihilation. At this time, Earth was closest to becoming a lifeless wasteland. The world ocean, once teeming with diverse life, became a lifeless mass where only a few species that could adapt to extreme conditions survived. On land, Silence reigned where once forests and grasslands thrived, leaving only empty spaces as reminders of the life that once flourished. Recovery from this catastrophic event took tens of millions of years, and it was only with the onset of the Triassic period that ecosystems began to slowly recover. Research shows that new species, such as dinosaurs and the first mammals, began to occupy the niches left vacant by the extinction. This process of recovery was long and arduous, as if nature were learning anew to create life from the ashes. During this period, the planet underwent significant changes, including climate shifts that gave rise to new ecosystems. The Permian extinction was not only a catastrophe, but also a turning point for further life evolution on Earth, leaving traces that can still be seen today. Scientific research indicates that such events, like the Permian extinction, have occurred many times, but none have been on such a scale. Therefore, studying the Permian extinction remains relevant for understanding the processes that may threaten life on Earth today and in the future. The Siberian traps represent one of the most likely causes of the Permian extinction, which occurred approximately 250 million years ago. These volcanic formations emerged as a result of massive eruptions that covered vast areas of present-day Siberia, particularly the region known as the Siberian Traps. Volcanic activity persisted for several 100,000 years, releasing enormous volumes of carbon dioxide and sulfur compounds into the atmosphere, leading to significant climate changes. Geologists estimate that the area covered by lava flows is comparable in size to modern Europe. And this volcanic activity was so intense that in some places, lava layers reached depths of up to 2 kilometers. The main eruptions took place between 280 million and 250 million years ago, when volcanoes spewed lava that formed extensive plateaus and left behind characteristic geological structures. Lava flows, like slow-moving rivers, filled valleys and plains, creating new landscapes that were far removed from the previous ecosystems. The release of large volumes of carbon dioxide led to significant changes in Earth's atmosphere. Oxygen levels decreased and temperature increased, potentially leading to a greenhouse effect. Volcanic gases containing sulfur formed sulfur clouds that could cause acid rain, destroying flora and fauna. These catastrophic changes in the atmosphere could have triggered a cascade of effects in the oceans, including oxygen depletion, which in turn led to mass extinctions of marine organisms. Discussions about the impact of the Siberian traps on ecosystems continue among scientists, as their influence could have been so profound that it altered the entire course of evolution on the planet. Research shows that such volcanic events can have long-term consequences, affecting not only the climate, but the biosphere as a whole. The formation of the Siberian traps was one of the most significant volcanic events in Earth's history, leaving many questions about how such catastrophes affect life on the planet. Considering all these factors, it is clear that the Siberian traps played a crucial role in the process that led to one of the most massive extinctions in Earth's history. The complex processes resulting from their eruptions continue to be the subject of intense study by researchers. The Mesozoic era, spanning from 253 to 66 million years ago, represents a unique middle age in Earth's history, situated between two catastrophic mass extinctions, the Permian and the Cretaceous Paleogene. During this time, the planet underwent significant changes, recovering from the Permian extinction, which occurred around 250 million years ago and led to the disappearance of approximately 95% of marine species and 75% of terrestrial life. The Mesozoic era is divided into three periods: the Triassic, Jurassic, and Cretaceous. In the Triassic period, which lasted from 253 to 200 million years ago, the recovery of ecosystems began, and new groups of organisms started to appear on Earth. During this time, reptiles became the dominant class, filling the ecological niches left vacant. For instance, dinosaurs, which first appeared in the Triassic, rapidly evolved and diversified, occupying various ecological roles, from herbivores to carnivores. The Jurassic period, which lasted from 200 to 155 million years ago, was a time of dinosaur dominance. During this period, they reached their maximum diversity and size. It is known that giants like the Argentinosaurus could reach lengths of up to 35 meters. Additionally, the Jurassic period saw the emergence of a new class of animals, the bird-like reptiles, which were the ancestors of modern birds. The Cretaceous period, which lasted from 155 to 66 million years ago, marked the peak of evolutionary processes. During this time, there was a widespread spread of flowering plants, which replaced gymnosperms and became the primary food source for new insects and animals. These flowering plants, such as magnolias and lilies, first began to attract pollinators, contributing to the further evolution of both plants and animals. At the Cretaceous-Paleogene boundary, which occurred around 65 million years ago, a second mass extinction occurred, leading to the demise of the dinosaurs. However, the Mesozoic era was a time of great evolutionary innovations. Research has shown that during this period, numerous adaptations took place, including the development of warm-bloodedness in dinosaurs and the appearance of the first mammals. For example, in the Jurassic period, the first mammals, such as the echidna and the rhinoceros, began to occupy niches vacated by dinosaurs. As a result, the Mesozoic era, often referred to as the Age of Reptiles, was actually a time of complex evolutionary changes that shaped the future of the planet. During this period, new ecosystems and forms of life emerged, forming the basis for modern biodiversity. Paleontological research indicates that many modern groups of animals, such as birds, mammals, and insects, originated during this time, demonstrating a high degree of adaptation and diversity of life on Earth. The Triassic period, spanning from 245 to 210 million years ago, marked a significant turning point in Earth's history. It was a time when ecosystems, decimated by the Permian extinction, began to slowly recover. Following the mass extinction that occurred at the boundary of the Permian and Triassic periods, when approximately 90% of all species on the planet perished, the world was in crisis. Landscapes once teeming with life became desolate wastelands, and the surviving organisms faced harsh conditions as the climate became hot and arid, particularly on the supercontinent Pangaea, where temperatures could reach 30 degrees Celsius. In these conditions, surviving groups of organisms, including the ancestors of modern reptiles, began to occupy the vacant ecological niches. The emergence of new life forms became possible due to adaptive changes. For example, archosaurs, which appeared during this time, became the ancestors of dinosaurs, crocodiles, and turtles, occupying diverse ecological niches in various habitats. At the beginning of the Triassic period, groups of reptiles such as Protoceratops, which had unique adaptations allowing them to survive in arid climates, began to develop. These reptiles could reach lengths of up to 2 meters and had powerful jaws, enabling them to hunt smaller animals and vegetation. Meanwhile, on the plant front, coniferous trees began to dominate ecosystems, also contributing to the development of new life forms. These plants, with their ability to photosynthesize in high temperatures, became the primary food source for surviving herbivorous reptiles. Concurrently, in water bodies, new groups of amphibians, such as early ancestors of frogs, began to develop. These amphibians adapted to life both on land and in water. One example of such amphibians is the Temnospondyli family, whose members could reach lengths of up to 3 meters and had powerful jaws for catching prey. This period also saw the appearance of the first mammals, which began to evolve from small mouse-like creatures that survived in the shadows of giant reptiles. They used nocturnal behavior to hide from predators, giving them an advantage in the complex climatic conditions. During the Triassic period, life on Earth continued to develop, and ecosystems gradually restored their biodiversity, although this took many millions of years. The appearance of new reptiles and plants became the foundation for the formation of complex ecosystems that would dominate in subsequent periods. By the end of the Triassic, Earth was inhabited by a diverse array of life forms, including the first dinosaurs such as Eoraptor, which began to occupy their ecological niches. These dinosaurs, living approximately 230 million years ago, were small but already demonstrated adaptations that would later allow them to become the dominant animals on the planet. Pangaea was a gigantic supercontinent that existed approximately 300 million years ago and united almost all of the land on Earth into a single mass. This landmass was surrounded by a vast ocean known as Panthalassa, which covered more than 80% of the planet's surface. Imagine boundless expanses where there were no modern continents, only a continuous landmass stretching from pole to pole, with unique climatic conditions. Pangaea was influenced by various climatic zones, from tropical forests to cold Arctic conditions, creating diverse ecosystems. Since Pangaea was isolated from other landmasses, this facilitated the diversity of life, including early reptiles and amphibians, which evolved in specific conditions different from today's. Oceanic currents at that time were entirely different from those of today, as there were no continental barriers, allowing waters to circulate freely around the supercontinent. This affected the climate worldwide, creating more stable temperature conditions and promoting the spread of moisture and precipitation. Compared to today's situation, where continents are separated and oceans cross them, Pangaea had a unified ecosystem balance that favored the evolution of various forms of life. For example, in the conditions of Pangaea, such organisms as the first mammals began their journey to dominance, which took millions of years. Gradually, due to tectonic processes, Pangaea began to break apart, leading to the formation of modern continents and changes in oceanic currents. This breakup occurred over several tens of millions of years, starting from the late Triassic and ending in the early Jurassic period. Scientists such as Alfred Wegener, who in the early 20th century proposed the theory of continental drift, studied how tectonic plates move and how this affects geological processes. As a result of this movement, ecosystems began to change, and animal and plant species adapted to new conditions, leading to significant changes in the biosphere. While Pangaea existed, the level of oxygen in the atmosphere was significantly higher than today, which promoted the growth of giant plants and changes in the structure of ecosystems. For example, forests of coniferous trees covered a large part of the continent, creating favorable conditions for the existence of various forms of life. Evolutionary changes that occurred at that time continue to influence the modern world. Pangaea, as a unique geological formation, became a catalyst for numerous changes in ecosystems and climate, which shaped the appearance of our planet. Modern data indicate that the existence of this supercontinent contributed to the formation of coal deposits, which became the basis for the energy infrastructure of many countries. The internal regions of Pangaea were characterized by extreme climatic conditions, where continental climate prevailed without any mitigating factors from the ocean. These territories, located far from the coasts, experienced extremely hot summers with temperatures exceeding 50 degrees Celsius and cold winters when thermometers dropped to -30. Such climatic conditions contributed to the formation of vast deserts and semi-deserts that occupied the central areas of the supercontinent. These arid spaces were covered with hardy grassy and shrubby plants that possessed remarkable adaptations for survival in conditions of water scarcity. For example, some types of cacti and succulents accumulated water in their tissues to endure long periods of drought. Rare oases emerged around the few lakes and rivers, serving as sanctuaries for life and sources of water for plants and animals. Oases, typically, had very high biological productivity as they concentrated all necessary resources. In these conditions, animals such as ancient reptiles and mammals developed unique strategies for survival. Some of them, for instance, could actively dig burrows to escape the scorching sun during hot days, while others adapted to a nocturnal lifestyle, hunting in cooler hours. The presence of such harsh climatic conditions posed significant challenges for ecosystems, requiring organisms to develop special adaptations. Since plants and animals could not rely on constant water availability, many of them evolved mechanisms to minimize water loss. Drought-resistant species such as archer and other conifers had deep roots that allowed them to reach underground water-bearing layers. These trees could also shed their leaves during drought to reduce evaporation. As a result, in such conditions, a unique ecosystem formed, where each individual played its role in maintaining balance. There were also predators that adapted to hunting their prey in conditions of intense resource competition. The internal regions of Pangaea became not only the arena for evolution, but also a source of biological innovations that we can observe today. These harsh conditions served as a catalyst for the creation of a diversity of life forms that could survive and adapt to the specific requirements of their habitat. For example, some ancient mammals that inhabited these conditions changed their habits to use food available only in certain seasons, allowing them to survive even in the most challenging climatic situations. High temperature and low humidity became the defining factors for the formation of a landscape that we can imagine as vast deserts interrupted only by life-giving oases, where life thrived amidst the harsh climatic realities. These conditions contributed to the formation not only of unique biodiversity, but also of complex ecosystems that became the foundation for the future evolution of life on Earth. The breakup of Pangaea is one of the most significant geological processes in the history of our planet, which began approximately 200 million years ago. Under the pressure of tectonic forces, the unified mass of land began to fracture, like an old tree cracking under the onslaught of a strong wind. At the beginning of this process, Pangaea was a vast continent surrounded by a single gigantic ocean called Panthalassa. As the tectonic plates began to drift apart, narrow marine straits formed between them, which gradually widened. These straits became the basis for future oceans. The Atlantic Ocean separated North and South America from Europe and Africa, while the Indian Ocean emerged between Africa and the Indian subcontinent. The process of Pangaea's disintegration was not instantaneous. It took millions of years during which new tectonic structures emerged. For example, around 100 million years ago, when the movement of plates became more intense, geological features like the Himalayas were formed as a result of the collision between the Indian and Eurasian plates. This collision also led to the formation of high mountains, which became home to unique flora and fauna. At the same time, changes in the configuration of the oceans also altered marine currents. Warm currents, such as the Gulf Stream, began to form, which, in turn, changed the climatic conditions on Earth. Warm and cold currents created various ecosystems where life could develop and adapt to new conditions. With the breakup of Pangaea, new opportunities for evolution and diversification of life emerged. Isolated continents became incubators for new species that adapted to various climatic conditions. For example, in Australia, unique species such as kangaroos and koalas evolved, which are not found anywhere else in the world. At the same time, on other continents, their own unique species appeared, such as dinosaurs in North America and mammals in Europe. This process of evolution continued for millions of years, resulting in the remarkable biodiversity we observe today. Climatic changes caused by the formation of new oceans also had a significant impact on life on Earth. Oceans began to regulate temperature, creating more stable climatic conditions, which facilitated the development of complex ecosystems and an increase in biomass. Ultimately, the breakup of Pangaea became a catalyst for further evolution of life, creating conditions in which life could thrive. The distance between continents increased, and this facilitated the appearance of new species that adapted to their unique ecosystems. For example, as a result of the drifting apart of continents, unique marine ecosystems such as coral reefs emerged, which became home to millions of fish and other marine organisms. These changes not only affected life on land, but also altered the composition of oceanic waters, which, in turn, affected marine fauna. In the process of Pangaea's disintegration, new oceanic basins such as the Caribbean Sea and the Gulf of Mexico were formed, which became home to unique ecosystems. These new water bodies contributed to an increase in the diversity of marine organisms such as mollusks, fish, and algae, which adapted to new conditions. Thus, the breakup of Pangaea was not only a geological event, but also a powerful catalyst for the evolution of life on the planet, changing not only its physical structure, but also its biological diversity. The oceans formed as a result of this process became important elements in the development of the climate and ecosystems of Earth as we know it today. The Jurassic period, which lasted from 159 to 145 million years ago, was an era of the greatest flourishing of dinosaurs, when these giant reptiles dominated among terrestrial vertebrates. During this time, dinosaurs adapted to diverse climatic conditions and ecological niches, creating complex ecosystems. Wet forests, filled with giant horsetails and ferns, formed dense undergrowth where small mammals like Morganucodon, the size of a modern mole, found shelter from predators. Vast plains covered with cycads and ginkgos provided ideal grazing grounds for herbivorous dinosaurs such as Diplodocus and Brachiosaurus, which could reach lengths of up to 25 meters and weigh more than 100 tons. These sauropods formed herds, moving across open spaces in search of food. Coastal marshes and lagoons, teeming with aquatic vegetation, were home to predators like Allosaurus, up to 9 meters long, which hunted larger herbivores such as Stegosaurus, known for its distinctive bony plates on its back. These ecosystems not only enriched the diversity of fauna, but also facilitated evolutionary changes, as various dinosaur species began to develop unique adaptations. For example, some carnivorous dinosaurs like Velociraptor started to exhibit social behavior, hunting in groups, which increased their chances of successful hunts. Meanwhile, giant herbivorous dinosaurs such as Triceratops developed protective mechanisms, including horns and shields, to defend against predators. The Jurassic period was also a time of significant diversity of marine organisms, including giant plesiosaurs and ichthyosaurs that inhabited the oceans, creating complex food chains. On land, ecosystems were teeming with life, from tiny insects that pollinated plants to large mammals that began to evolve in response to changes in the environment. As a result, the Jurassic period was one of the most vibrant and diverse periods in Earth's history, where dinosaurs reigned on the planet, occupying numerous ecological niches and adapting to changes in climate and environment. The total number of known dinosaur species during the Jurassic period exceeds 600, highlighting their diversity and success during this period. Archaeopteryx is an extraordinary creature that became one of the most significant discoveries in the study of evolution, representing a transitional form between reptiles and birds. This feathered dinosaur, approximately 50 centimeters long and weighing around 1 kilogram, combined characteristics of both classes of animals. Its teeth, long bony tail, and claws on its wings indicate its reptilian lineage, while its feathers, wings, and wishbone suggest its proximity to modern birds. Archaeopteryx fossils were discovered in Germany in the late 19th century, with the first complete specimen found in a quarry in Bavaria in 1859. These discoveries not only confirmed the theory of evolution, but also opened new horizons in understanding the appearance of the ancestors of modern birds. Archaeopteryx likely lived in dense forests of the Jurassic period, where it could glide from tree to tree using its well-developed wings. Its feathers, although not ideal for long-distance flight, allowed it to make short flights, enabling it to avoid predators and hunt insects and other small animals. These aspects of its lifestyle highlight adaptive strategies employed in the conditions of the Jurassic forest, where competition for resources was extremely high. Archaeopteryx became a symbol of evolutionary changes, demonstrating how one group of animals gradually transformed into another, and its fossils serve as the foundation for further research in paleontology and zoology. 18 known specimens of Archaeopteryx, discovered to date, confirm that this creature indeed existed and played a significant role in the evolutionary chain. These fossils are dated to the end of the Jurassic period, around 150 million years ago, making Archaeopteryx one of the oldest known representatives of the transitional form between reptiles and birds. The Mesozoic era ended with the Cretaceous period, marked by significant climate and ecosystem changes on Earth. During this time, continents continued to drift apart, leading to the formation of new oceans and changes in ocean currents. Sea levels reached record highs, causing extensive flooding of land areas and the creation of vast shallow seas. These new ecosystems became home to a variety of marine organisms that evolved to adapt to the changing conditions. On land, forests became increasingly diverse, with new plant and animal groups appearing. Evolutionary innovations like flowering plants drastically altered landscapes, creating new habitats and opportunities for other organisms. The Cretaceous period also saw a wide variety of dinosaurs occupying different ecological niches, from giant herbivores to predators capable of hunting them. However, this period was not just one of flourishing life. It preceded one of the most famous mass extinctions in Earth's history, which occurred at the end of this period. This event led to the disappearance of approximately 75% of all species, including most dinosaurs, and is considered one of the greatest catastrophes in the history of life on our planet. Various theories explain the causes of this extinction, including asteroid impacts and volcanic activity, but the precise mechanisms are still debated among scientists. Nevertheless, this event paved the way for a new phase in evolution, opening up ecological niches for mammals and other forms of life that took advantage of the newly available spaces. During the Cretaceous period, which lasted from 130 to 60 million years ago, Earth was almost unrecognizable. Large, shallow seas flooded vast territories that today comprise modern continents such as North America, Europe, and Asia. These seas, known as the Cretaceous Sea, were characterized by warm waters, creating ideal conditions for the flourishing of marine life. Water temperatures ranged from 20 to 30 degrees Celsius, fostering the development of rich ecosystems. The Cretaceous Sea was home to ammonites, mollusks with spiral shells that could reach diameters of up to 1 meter. These creatures were a vital part of the food chain, serving as food for numerous marine reptiles such as plesiosaurs and ichthyosaurs, which could reach lengths of up to 15 meters. The diversity of marine inhabitants was impressive, ranging from small bony fish that were just beginning to evolve to giant marine reptiles that dominated these waters. The seabed of the Cretaceous Sea was covered in white chalky silt, formed from the skeletons of microscopic organisms such as Radiolaria and Foraminifera. These organisms, with their calcium-based shells, gradually settled to the bottom, forming thick layers of sediment that eventually became limestone and chalk. It was this process that gave the Cretaceous period its name. Chalky deposits could reach significant thicknesses, sometimes exceeding several hundred meters. As sea levels rose, the seas continued to flood low-lying land areas, creating extensive shelf zones rich in life. Such shelves, like the modern Caspian Sea, were part of larger marine systems that connected continents and created unique biotopes. The Cretaceous Sea also hosted complex ecosystems where many species interacted. Some researchers, such as Edward Forbes in the 18th century, noted that the Cretaceous Sea served as an important migration site for many marine animals. During this time, high levels of carbon dioxide and a warm climate led to the active development of coral reefs, which provided additional habitats and food sources for many marine organisms. Coral communities, composed of various coral species, could cover thousands of square kilometres, creating underwater gardens that not only provided shelter, but also facilitated the reproduction and growth of numerous marine creatures. Thus, the Cretaceous Sea was not only a home to diverse forms of life, but also played a crucial role in shaping the geological structure of the planet. The processes that occurred during this time resulted in the formation of layers that became the foundation for future deposits, which we can observe today. High sea levels and extensive shallow zones contributed to the Cretaceous period being an era of marine biosphere prosperity, leaving behind a rich legacy in the form of fossil remains found worldwide. Notable finds, such as fossilized ammonite shells and other marine creatures, allow scientists to better understand the ecosystems of that time and their evolution. During the Cretaceous period, which lasted from approximately 130 to 65 million years ago, a true botanical revolution occurred. Flowering plants, or angiosperms, began to spread actively across the planet, replacing the previously dominant gymnosperms. Their vibrant flowers and fruits attracted numerous pollinating insects, significantly increasing the chances of successful reproduction. Scientists suggest that symbiotic relationships with insects played a crucial role in the flourishing of flowering plants. For example, fossils of bees have been found dating back to that time, which confirms their interaction with flowering plants. During this period, plants such as magnolias, planes, and figs appeared on Earth. These flowering trees not only enriched the diversity of flora, but also transformed the appearance of Cretaceous forests. Forests, previously dominated by conifers, began to fill with new cultural forms, creating ecosystems that attracted a multitude of animal species. For instance, by the end of the Cretaceous period, around 60 million years ago, these new forests became habitats for various mammals and birds that adapted to the changes in their environment. Flowering plants had more efficient reproduction mechanisms. Their seeds could spread over wider territories through wind and water, as well as through fruits that attracted animals, allowing them to colonize new ecosystems. As a result, by the end of the Cretaceous period, flowering plants began to dominate on all continents. Additionally, it is worth noting that during this time, the first fruits, such as berries and nuts, appeared, opening new opportunities for animals to use these resources in their diet. Thus, flowering plants, thanks to their adaptability and diversity, created new ecological niches that facilitated the evolution of numerous new species. Fossils found during this period show that the diversity of pollinators, such as butterflies and beetles, increased significantly, with many of them specializing on specific flowers, confirming the complexity and interconnectedness of the ecosystems of that time. Today, it is known that approximately 85% of all modern plants are flowering plants, and their success during the Cretaceous period laid the foundation for the further development of flora on Earth. On the border of the Paleogene period, approximately 65 million years ago, one of the most catastrophic events in Earth's history occurred: a collision between an asteroid with a diameter of about 10 kilometers and our planet. This celestial body struck Earth in the territory of the present-day Yucatan Peninsula, leaving behind the Chicxulub crater, which is over 100 kilometers in diameter. The impact was so powerful that it caused a blinding flash of light, comparable to billions of nuclear explosions, vaporizing rocks, and ejecting trillions of tons of dust and ash into the atmosphere. This moment released energy equivalent to billions of megatons of TNT and generated gigantic tsunamis that swept across coastal lands, destroying everything in their path. After the impact, Earth was plunged into chaos. Global fires broke out in forests and savannas, leading to even more carbon release into the atmosphere. The resulting conditions caused a nuclear winter as sunlight was blocked by clouds of ash, leading to a sharp drop in global temperature. Under such conditions, photosynthesis virtually ceased, causing a collapse of food chains. Plants began to die, and with them, the animal species that depended on them. Given that around 75% of all species, including non-avian dinosaurs, went extinct as a result of this catastrophe, one can imagine the scale of the destruction. Acidic rains, caused by chemical reactions in the atmosphere, added another threat to the already catastrophic conditions. This event marked a turning point in Earth's history, paving the way for the dominance of mammals and, ultimately, the emergence of humans. The study of the Chicxulub crater and its consequences continues to this day, and scientists such as Dr. Alan Hilder, who leads research in this area, are uncovering new evidence of the impact's effects. Each new discovery from the excavations helps us better understand how this collision altered the planet's climate and ecosystems, creating conditions that favored the survival of only the most adapted species. The Cenozoic era began approximately 66 million years ago and continues to the present day, representing a period during which Earth recovers from the catastrophic Cretaceous-Paleogene extinction. This time saw the filling of ecological niches by new groups of organisms, resulting in an unprecedented diversity of life. Throughout this era, numerous changes occurred that not only altered the biosphere, but also shaped the evolution of many organisms. The Cenozoic is divided into three main periods: Paleogene, Neogene, and Anthropocene. The Paleogene, lasting around 40 million years, saw the active development and adaptation of mammals to various habitats, filling the niches previously occupied by dinosaurs. During this time, the first ancestors of modern mammals began to develop their unique adaptations. For instance, this period saw the emergence of groups like primates and carnivores. The Neogene, following the Paleogene, spanned from 23 to 2.5 million years ago, during which mammals continued to evolve, with the appearance of large herbivores such as mammoths and rhinos, and the formation of modern ecosystems. The Anthropocene, beginning around 2.5 million years ago, led to human dominance on the planet, significantly impacting the surrounding environment. This era is often referred to as the Age of Mammals, as it is during this period that mammals came to the forefront in ecosystems, although it is important not to overlook the flourishing of other groups. Birds, for example, adapted to various habitats, developing unique forms and behaviors, while flowering plants began to dominate the plant world, creating diverse ecosystems that we observe today. In the Cenozoic era, the diversity of insects also significantly increased, playing a crucial role in pollinating flowering plants and maintaining the balance of ecosystems. As a result of these transformations, the Cenozoic era is a dynamic and diverse period where each new generation of organisms adapts to changing life conditions. It is important to note that many modern ecosystems were formed during this period, continuing to evolve and change. For instance, research shows that the level of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere significantly fluctuated during the Cenozoic period, affecting climate conditions and, consequently, life on the planet. Climate changes during this period facilitated the migration of species and the formation of new ecosystems capable of adapting to new conditions. As a result, many organisms became dominant in their ecosystems, establishing complex interrelationships that we can observe today. For example, the diversity of life forms on Earth became possible through the interaction between plants, animals, and microorganisms, creating a unique biosphere where everything is interconnected. During the Cenozoic era, significant geological changes occurred, such as the formation of mountain systems, for example, the Himalayas, which also influenced climate and life on the planet. These changes created new conditions for the existence of various species and contributed to the further development of life on Earth, demonstrating how geology, climate, and biology interact with each other. The Paleocene, which began around 60 million years ago, was a time when, after the mass extinction of dinosaurs at the end of the Mesozoic era, mammals emerged onto the scene. This epoch marked an adaptive radiation, where small, primitive mammals began to fill the ecological niches left vacant. For instance, some of the earliest mammals were pantodonts, which existed from around 60 to 40 million years ago. These creatures were an exotic mix of traits that do not exist in the modern world. Pantodonts resembled large herbivores but had unusual features such as long, low bodies and prominent teeth, indicating their adaptability to a varied diet. On the other hand, Mesonychids, which lived around the same time, were an astonishing combination of carnivorous and herbivorous traits, resembling both wolves and pigs. These mammals had sharp teeth and could reach lengths of up to 1 meter, making them effective predators in environments where competition for food was fierce. Multituberculates, also arising during this period, were small mammals with characteristic bumps on their teeth, allowing them to efficiently chew hard vegetation. These evolutionary experiments, in essence, were nature's attempts to find optimal forms of life, but many of them proved unsuccessful. For example, pantodonts and mesonychids, despite their unique adaptations, could not survive in the face of climate change and competition with more specialized mammals, such as the primitive ancestors of modern predators and herbivores. By the end of the Paleocene, around 50 million years ago, many of these experiments disappeared, giving way to more successful groups that could better adapt to changing environmental conditions. The Paleocene was a crucial milestone in the evolution of mammals, as they began to colonize new ecosystems and develop their unique traits, leading to the emergence of modern forms. For instance, it was during this time that early primates appeared, laying the foundation for the subsequent diversity of mammals. The Paleocene was not just a time of survival, but also a time of bold evolutionary experiments, where each new form of life tested its strength in the struggle for existence. In this context, it is important to note that it was during the Paleocene that mammals began to develop various survival strategies, ultimately leading to the emergence of groups such as predatory mammals, including the first ancestors of dogs and cats. Mammals began to occupy ecological niches that were previously inaccessible, thanks to their ability to adapt and change behavior. As a result, in a world once dominated by dinosaurs, mammals, albeit in a primitive form, began to gain strength, forming the basis for future diversity. At this time, Earth was already home to species such as Arctocyon, which were the size of a cat and could have been ancestors of modern bears. In this complex dynamic, where each species fought for its niche, mammals adapted to new conditions, and it was during this period that they began to explore new evolutionary paths, marking a significant step in their further evolution. The formation of the Himalayas is one of the most impressive examples of mountain building in the Cenozoic era, which began approximately 30 million years ago and continues to this day. The Indian tectonic plate moves northward at a speed of about 5 centimeters per year, colliding with the Eurasian plate. This collision has created a massive geological process that has led to the folding and uplift of the Earth's crust. As India began its journey northward, it was covered by the ocean, and the ocean floor gradually rose, forming massive mountain ranges. Initially, small mountains emerged, which over time grew taller and taller, eventually reaching heights of more than 8 kilometers above sea level. This process resulted in the formation of the world's highest peaks, such as Mount Everest, which reaches a height of 8,148 meters. The Himalayas not only altered the landscape of the region, but also significantly influenced the climate conditions. The high mountains act as a barrier to monsoon winds, creating extensive rainfall on the southern slopes and dry conditions on the northern side, leading to the formation of unique ecosystems. On the southern slopes of the Himalayas, where humidity is high, tropical forests thrive, while on the northern slopes one can find Arctic deserts. This climatic variability has created new ecological niches for various plant and animal species. For example, in the Himalayas, one can find rare plant species such as rhododendrons, which have adapted to high-altitude conditions, as well as animals like the snow leopard, which uses the mountain slopes for hunting and shelter. The formation of the Himalayas also altered the migration routes of animals, influencing the evolution of many species, including the Tibetan yak, which has adapted to life at high altitudes. These mountains have become not only a natural boundary, but also a significant cultural and historical center for many peoples living in their shadow. The Himalayas, cradle of ancient civilizations such as Indian and Tibetan, have become a place of worship and spiritual quest. Their grandeur and scale continue to inspire people around the world, while the geological processes behind their formation serve as a reminder of the relentless movement of the Earth. The height of the Himalayas, exceeding 8 kilometers, makes them the highest mountains on the planet. The Paleogene climatic optimum was a unique period in Earth's history when the climate reached extremely warm values. During this time, at the beginning of the Cenozoic era, the poles were free of ice caps, and instead, vast areas of lush subtropical vegetation spread. Forests consisting of coniferous and broad-leaved trees extended far to the north, reaching latitudes where today cold and silence reign. This fertile land was home to diverse groups of animals and plants. In the Arctic and Antarctic, where today only ice deserts are found, real forests grew, and among them, crocodiles, turtles, and other heat-loving creatures roamed. For example, in the northern part of modern Greenland, remnants of trees have been found that indicate the presence of coniferous and deciduous forests, serving as a clear evidence of the warmth of this period. The abundance of plants contributed to the development of diverse ecosystems where both large mammals and numerous bird and reptile species thrived. An example of this is the fossilized remains of giant mammals, such as beavers the size of a modern human, which inhabited the warm forests. This time was a true paradise for many species that managed to adapt to conditions where the temperature was significantly higher than today. Scientists studying this period note that even in remote regions such as Antarctica, traces of the existence of dinosaurs and other warm-blooded animals were found, which suggests how dramatically the climate has changed over millions of years. Evolution during this period proceeded at a rapid pace, and thanks to such a climate, many animal and plant species reached unprecedented prosperity. Research shows that such conditions not only ensured survival, but also facilitated the rapid development of new life forms that filled all available niches. This climatic optimum became the basis for the formation of the biosphere, which was significantly different from what we observe today. The presence of such favorable conditions allowed many groups of organisms to occupy new ecological niches and adapt to changing conditions. For example, as the temperature decreased, many animal and plant species disappeared. But some managed to survive and adapt to new conditions, leading to the appearance of modern ecosystems. This time became the foundation for the formation of diverse biomes that we can observe in different corners of our planet. There were even such species that in our time seem exotic and impossible to exist in conditions that we consider normal. The abundance of water, as well as heat, created ideal conditions for the reproduction and growth of flora and fauna. Forests in polar regions became a real ecosystem where not only animals, but also many plant species that today can only be found in the tropics lived. Thus, The Paleogene climatic optimum opened new horizons for life on Earth, bringing diversity that allowed many species to flourish. Scientific research shows that it was during this period that the first ancestors of modern mammals appeared, making this stage key in the evolution of life on our planet. Eocene tropical forests of Antarctica present a remarkable image of a vanished world, where the southern polar continent was covered in lush vegetation. This period, which spanned approximately from 46 to 36 million years ago, was characterized by a warm climate with temperatures that were tens of degrees higher than current levels. In these forests grew southern beeches and araucarias, which formed dense forest masses, creating an ecosystem teeming with life. Research shows that during this time, there was a diverse fauna, including marsupial mammals such as primitive kangaroos that inhabited the trees, as well as giant flightless birds like Diatryma, which reached heights of up to 2 meters and weighed around 100 kilograms. Their large sizes were likely due to the absence of predators, allowing them to evolve into such unusual forms. Additionally, these forests were home to insects, including numerous species of bees and butterflies, indicating a high diversity of pollinators necessary for maintaining the ecosystem. Reptiles also found their place in these tropics. They included species that in modern conditions might seem exotic, such as large lizards and even proto-turtles, ancestors of modern crocodiles. These forests were not only a home for unique animals, but also fertile soil for numerous plants that created complex interconnections in the ecosystem. It is important to note that access to sunlight was maximal due to the absence of ice sheets, which facilitated active photosynthesis and, consequently, high levels of oxygen in the atmosphere. The contrast between this ancient green continent and today's Antarctica, buried under a kilometre of ice, is striking. Today's Antarctica is vast white expanses where temperatures can drop to minus 50 degrees Celsius, and life is almost non-existent. The ice caps that cover most of the continent are the result of millions of years of climate change, leading to the freezing of ecosystems when the tropical forests disappeared, giving way to glacial conditions. Paleontologists find fossils of plants and animals that were part of this remarkable forest world in places like the islands of Cambridge and the Kotz Reserve, confirming the existence of this unique biome. For example, the found fossils of southern beech show that this species was not only widespread in Antarctica, but also on other continents such as South America and New Zealand, confirming the theory that in the Eocene, all continents were closer to each other. As a result of these studies, scientists reconstruct images of forests filled with sounds and movements that once reigned in these exotic conditions, where even climate changes left their mark on the evolution of species, forming unique adaptations. For instance, some researchers suggest that it was in the conditions of a warm climate that such features as large animal sizes developed, which could effectively use the resources available in abundance. These data help us understand how climate changes affect biological diversity on the planet and how these processes continue to develop even today. During the evolution of cetaceans, an extraordinary transformation occurred, beginning with terrestrial mammals closely related to modern artiodactyls. Examples of such creatures include the Pachycetids, which inhabited the territory of present-day Pakistan around 51 million years ago. These wolf-like animals had hind limbs adapted for running on land, but were already showing interest in the aquatic environment, hunting in coastal waters. Their skulls indicate that they could hunt fish and other marine organisms. The next stage in this evolutionary chain were the Ambulocydes, which appeared around 48 million years ago. These semi-aquatic predators had longer limbs and could move both on land and in water. Their crocodile-like appearance and adaptations to aquatic life suggest a transition to a more active aquatic lifestyle, as evidenced by fossil finds in India and Pakistan. They served as a transitional link between terrestrial and fully aquatic creatures. Around 42 million years ago, the Protocetids emerged, the first fully aquatic mammals. They already had developed flippers, and their nostrils began to migrate to the top of their heads, indicating full adaptation to marine life. Fossil finds of Protocetids, such as the genus Protocetus, show that these animals had elongated bodies and short limbs, bringing them closer to modern whales. By this time, they had developed echolocation abilities, allowing them to hunt in dark waters. Around 35 million years ago, the first true whales, such as the genus Basilosaurus, appeared, reaching lengths of up to 20 meters. These giants had long, streamlined bodies and retained some ancestral features, such as vestigial hind limbs. Over millions of years, cetaceans continued to evolve. And by the beginning of the Miocene, around 23 million years ago, modern species like blue whales and dolphins appeared. These creatures were fully adapted to life in the oceans, with streamlined bodies, powerful flippers, and unique social structures. Fossil finds, such as skulls and skeletons, allow us to trace this transition in great detail, including the gradual transformation of limbs into flippers and the migration of nostrils to the top of the head. Each new species opens new horizons for scientists to understand the evolutionary process, forming a comprehensive picture of how cetaceans became one of the most successful marine animals over millions of years. The Oligocene cooling event, which occurred approximately 34 million years ago, was one of the key milestones in the history of our planet's climate. This period marked a sharp change in climatic conditions as tropical and subtropical ecosystems began to contract, giving way to more cold-tolerant biomes. At this time, continents, in their current positions, began to exert a significant influence on climatic processes. Ice sheets formed on Antarctica started to expand, leading to changes in global circulation patterns. The Oligocene cooling was a crucial step towards the modern climatic regime of Earth, as it significantly impacted the evolutionary trajectories of many plant and animal groups. For instance, during this period, some tropical species began to go extinct, opening up new ecological niches for cold-loving organisms. As a result of this cooling, fauna and flora that had thrived in warm climates began to adapt to the new conditions. Survival and reproduction strategies of animals evolved, leading to the emergence of new species capable of surviving in harsher conditions. Simultaneously, forests that had once stretched across equatorial zones began to shrink, giving way to steppes and tundras. This change in vegetation cover also affected global carbon cycles, as the reduction in forest area decreased the amount of carbon absorbed by plants. The changes in ecosystems caused by the Oligocene cooling were so significant that they affected the entire food chain. The emergence of new life forms, such as the ancestors of modern mammals, became possible due to adaptation to these new conditions. In this context, the Oligocene cooling played a pivotal role in shaping modern ecosystems, contributing to the diversity of biological species and altering their habitats. This era served as a catalyst for evolutionary changes that continue to influence the planet to this day. Plants such as conifers began to dominate ecosystems, displacing more heat-loving species and contributing to the creation of new ecosystems. Thus, the Oligocene cooling became a turning point, not only defining climatic conditions, but also the evolutionary paths of living organisms. Scientific research indicates that many modern species evolved in the conditions that resulted from this cooling, underscoring its significance in the context of long-term climate changes. In the Miocene epoch, which spanned from 23 to 5 million years ago, there was a significant shift in ecosystems. Grassland ecosystems began to spread rapidly, displacing forests and creating new biomes such as savannas, steppes, and prairies. This transition was a result of global cooling, which intensified seasonal climate variations and altered rainfall patterns. Wet and warm conditions, suitable for forests, gave way to drier and continental conditions, favoring the spread of grasses. This ecological shift led to the formation of vast open landscapes that became home to numerous new forms of life. Hoofed animals like antelopes and horses began to develop the ability to run quickly, which was an important adaptive response to the increased threat from predators such as saber-toothed tigers and giant reptiles. This was not just an improvement in speed. Changes in the anatomy of their limbs allowed them to develop more powerful and longer legs, enhancing their maneuverability on open terrain. Strategies for defense against predators also evolved. Animals began to form herds, increasing their chances of survival, and developed additional tactics, including camouflage against the grassy backdrop. A significant aspect of this change was the development of specialized teeth in herbivores, enabling them to efficiently consume tough grasses that became dominant in the new ecosystems. For example, The teeth of early horses adapted to grind hard vegetation, which helped them survive in conditions where soft leaves were scarce. These changes in diet and behavior opened new evolutionary possibilities for many species that learned to utilize open spaces for their needs. For instance, in South America during this time, the ancestors of modern giraffes appeared, adapting to life in savannas and developing long necks to reach tall plants. Steppes and prairies became important ecosystems supporting biodiversity and influencing climate conditions, as open spaces facilitated better soil heating and wind patterns. During this time, mammals such as mammoths and bison also flourished, dominating these new ecosystems and adapting to conditions that were vastly different from those that had existed before. These changes not only altered the appearance of the planet, but also formed new food webs where herbivores and predators found their niches in the changing world. The emergence of ecosystems like savannas and steppes became a crucial stage in the evolution of Earth, determining the subsequent paths of development for various species. As a result of this ecological shift in the Miocene, animals and plants adapted and changed, creating unique ecosystems that continue to exist today, including important biomes such as African savannas, which support the diversity of wild nature. The Miocene epoch, spanning from 23 to 5 million years ago, was a time of significant changes in the evolution of primates, including the ancestors of humans. Among the key species that emerged during this period are Proconsul, Drypithecus, and Ramapithecus. Proconsul, which lived in eastern Africa around 20 million years ago, was a primitive human-like ape that possessed a combination of characteristics that... The Pliocene was a period of late Cainozoic, when the climate and geography of Earth began to resemble modern conditions to a significant degree. The continents had already taken their current positions, and the seas washed the shores in a manner similar to what we observe today. This time was characterized by the transition from the warmer climate of the Miocene to the cold Pliocene, creating a unique atmosphere for the formation of modern ecosystems. Modern biomes, such as forests, steppes, and deserts, began to form definitively, and many groups of animals and plants acquired the recognizable appearance we see today. During this time, the planet saw the active development of herbaceous plants, providing abundant food for herbivorous animals. Grasslands and savannas spread over vast territories, while forests, especially deciduous and coniferous ones, took their places in more temperate zones. The Pliocene became a crucial transitional stage for mammals, which began to adapt to these environmental changes. Many species, such as the ancestors of modern horses, elephants, and giraffes, began to develop, adapting to new living conditions. This period also saw the development of many predators, including the ancestors of lions and tigers, who became dominant in their ecosystems. A significant aspect of the Pliocene was the formation of large mountain ranges, such as the Alps and Himalayas, which influenced the climate and ecosystems of the region. These mountains changed the directions of ocean currents and contributed to the formation of various climatic zones, which, in turn, affected the migration of animals and plants. The Pliocene was a time when the biosphere began to prepare for the upcoming ice age, and many species began to show signs of adaptation to colder conditions. For example, some herbivorous animals experienced changes in their coat patterns, indicating a readiness for harsher climatic conditions. During this time, significant geological changes also occurred, such as the formation of new lakes and changes in river courses, which affected the distribution of water resources on the planet. The Pliocene laid the foundation for subsequent climatic changes that led to the appearance of ice ages and significant changes in ecosystems. Ultimately, this period was a crucial stage in the evolution of life on Earth and prepared the ground for the onset of a new ice age. The Pliocene covered a time when continents had already acquired their current outlines and many biomes began to form, creating conditions for the appearance of modern ecosystems. The Messinian crisis of salinity occurred approximately 5 million years ago, when the Mediterranean Sea was cut off from the Atlantic Ocean. This dramatic episode led to a significant drop in the sea level, causing a large part of it to dry up and exposing the sea floor. As a result, enormous salt deposits were formed, which can now be observed as salt layers exceeding several hundred meters in thickness. These deposits can be found in places like the Messina Gulf and the bottom of the ancient basin that was once full of water. In the place of the dried-up sea, deep canyons were formed, carved by rivers that rushed over the exposed floor, creating complex geomorphological structures. For example, the Greco River created canyons with depths of up to 100 meters and widths of several kilometers. In the deepest parts of the basin, salt lakes remained, such as Lake Trasimene, where the salinity can be 10 times higher than that of ocean water. This crisis had a significant impact on the regional climate, as the evaporation of water changed atmospheric conditions. As a result, this period saw the formation of arid conditions, which facilitated the migration of animals between Africa and Eurasia. The land bridge formed due to the drop in water level allowed various species, including the ancestors of modern elephants and rhinos, to move between continents. These migrations became possible because the boundary between the two continents became more permeable, allowing animals to move freely in search of food and water. The Messinian crisis of salinity was not only a geological, but also a biological event that altered the ecosystems of both continents. This period lasted, according to estimates, several 100,000 years before the water level rose again, and the Mediterranean Sea reconnected with the Atlantic. As a result of this process, known as the Messinian catastrophe, unique ecosystems were formed, which became the basis for the further development of the flora and fauna of the region. Today, in some places, remnants of these salt deposits can be seen, serving as evidence of one of the most dramatic geological catastrophes in the history of the Earth. In the late Miocene, approximately 7 to 5 million years ago, the formation of the Panama Isthmus began, which radically altered the global climate and ocean currents. Volcanic activity in this region created a land bridge between North and South America. As a result of this process, which concluded around 3 million years ago, a single ocean was divided into the Pacific and Atlantic. This narrow isthmus, only about 130 kilometers wide at its narrowest point, became a barrier that fundamentally changed the dynamics of ocean currents. The Gulf Stream, one of the most powerful currents, became significantly stronger as warm waters from the tropics began to flow through this isthmus into the North Atlantic Ocean. The increase in water temperature in this region facilitated more active evaporation and altered weather conditions, which, in turn, affected the climate of the entire planet. As a result of these changes, cold waters from the northern latitudes began to mix with the warm waters of the Gulf Stream, causing more pronounced temperature fluctuations and atmospheric pressure changes. This also led to the intensification of the North Atlantic Oscillator, which influences the climatic conditions in Europe and North America. Ultimately, the established system of currents contributed to cooling in the Northern Hemisphere and became one of the factors that led to the onset of the Ice Age, which began around 2 million years ago. The establishment of the Panama Isthmus created unique conditions for the formation of new ecosystems that adapted to the changed climatic conditions. As a result of this process, the level of oxygen in the atmosphere decreased, which also had an impact on the development of life on Earth. This transition to a colder climate served as a catalyst for the migration of species that began to move between continents. The tension between ecosystems led to the diversity of species in both North and South America, enriching the biological diversity of the region. The volcanic activity that created the Panama Isthmus also resulted in the formation of unique geological formations, such as volcanoes and mountain ranges, which became home to numerous species of living organisms. All these changes contributed to the creation of new ecosystems that adapted to the changed living conditions. There is evidence that during this time, the process of ice formation in Greenland began, which had an even greater impact on sea level and climatic conditions on the planet. The Great American Interchange was a massive biogeographical event that occurred around 3 million years ago, when the formation of the Isthmus of Panama connected North and South America, which had previously been separated by an ocean. This unique event in Earth's history allowed animals and plants that had long developed in isolation to cross the newly formed bridge, which became the stage for a grand migration of species. The fauna of both parts of the continent began to mix, and this exchange had a profound impact on ecosystems, leading to changes in the species that inhabited each continent. As a result of the interaction between two groups of animals, new ecological relationships emerged, and some species began to displace local ones, thereby altering food chains and habitats. For example, species that had previously lived only in the south began to move north, and vice versa. These migrations were not uniform. Some groups became established in their new environments and firmly rooted in new ecosystems, while others that found themselves on the new continent struggled with competition or climatic conditions and became victims of this exchange. Notably, the exchange continued for millions of years, leading to further evolution and adaptation of species. For instance, some species that arrived from North America and South America became dominant and altered the structure of ecosystems, while others that arrived from South America had a significant impact on ecosystems in the north. This process can be compared to historical human migrations, where some cultures strengthened their positions while others faced the risk of extinction. According to paleontologists, the Great American Interchange resulted in a significant change in the composition of fauna, including an increase in the number of predators and competitors for resources. For example, in South America, large mammals such as the ancestors of modern horses and other mammals appeared, which in turn altered the dynamics of existing ecosystems. This exchange was a pivotal moment in the history of the biosphere, changing not only the species but also their ecological niches. There is evidence that this process continued into subsequent epochs, even taking into account changes in climate and other geological factors. Scientists continue to study the consequences of this exchange to understand how it has influenced the current diversity of species on both continents. Currently, it is known that more than 100 species of animals and plants that are now widespread in both Americas have their roots in events related to the Great American Interchange. The Pleistocene Ice Age, which lasted from 2 million to 10,000 years ago, resulted in the formation of enormous ice sheets, up to several kilometers thick, that covered vast territories in North America, Europe, and Northern Asia. These glaciers not only altered the climate, but also dramatically transformed the landscape. For instance, in North America, the Laurentide ice sheet extended from Canada to the central parts of modern-day USA, shaping natural formations such as the Great Lakes, which are the result of melting ice and filling of depressions with water. During this time, fjords also formed in Scandinavia, where the flow of glaciers carved deep canyons that are now filled with seawater, creating characteristic bays. Moraine hills, formed by deposits left behind after the retreat of glaciers, still adorn the landscapes, demonstrating how glacial activity reshaped the planet's surface. Periodic advances and retreats of glaciers led to dramatic changes in ecosystems, forcing animals such as mammoths and woolly rhinos to adapt to new conditions or migrate to warmer regions. It is important to note that fluctuations in sea level played a crucial role in the formation of land bridges. For example, when sea level dropped, areas of land emerged, such as the Bering Land Bridge, connecting Asia and North America, allowing animals and early humans to migrate between continents. These migrations led to the spread of various species and cultures, contributing to the diversity of biological and cultural heritage. Ultimately, the Pleistocene Ice Age acted as a catalyst for many changes that we can observe today, both in geography and ecosystems. Today, we know of the remnants of glacial activity in the form of unique geological formations, such as lakes formed from melting glaciers and moraines that preserve evidence of the power of past glaciers. The Pleistocene megafauna was indeed an extraordinary phenomenon, characterized by its remarkable diversity and scale. Across all continents, giant animals adapted to cold climates and open landscapes of the Ice Age thrived. For instance, mammoths could reach heights of 4 meters and weigh more than 6 tons. These herbivores were covered in fur that helped them survive in harsh conditions, and their long tusks were used to dig through snow in search of food. Mastodons, their closest relatives, had shorter and curved tusks and differed from mammoths in that their teeth were better suited for eating leaves and twigs. Woolly rhinos, standing at 2 meters tall and weighing around 2 tons, possessed powerful horns and thick fur, enabling them to survive in cold steppes and tundras. These giants moved in herds, providing protection from predators and facilitating the efficient search for food. Saber-toothed cats like Smilodon were formidable predators of their time. These hunters had long, curved canines and could weigh up to 200 kilograms. Their powerful paws and muscular bodies allowed them to catch large prey such as bison and young mammoths. The social behavior of saber-toothed cats remains a subject of debate among scientists. Some suggest they may have hunted in groups, increasing their chances of success. Cave bears, reaching heights of 3 meters, were among the largest land predators of their time. They could weigh up to 700 kilograms and led a nomadic lifestyle, feeding on berries and roots and hibernating in caves for up to 5 months during winter. The megafauna of the Pleistocene was not only diverse but also interconnected. For example, mammoths could maintain ecosystems by digging up soil with their tusks and promoting plant growth, which in turn attracted other animals. However, most of these remarkable creatures went extinct at the end of the Pleistocene, approximately 30,000 years ago, likely due to a combination of climate change and hunting by early humans. Climate change led to the reduction of their habitats and the scarcity of food, while hunting put additional pressure on their populations. As a result, many species, such as the woolly rhino and the giant sloth, disappeared, leaving behind only fossils and memories of the time when giants roamed the planet. Fossils of megafauna found in various parts of the world, including North America and Eurasia, help scientists reconstruct the lives of these extraordinary animals. Discoveries such as well-preserved mammoth specimens found in the permafrost of Siberia provide insights into their physiology, lifestyle, and adaptations to environmental changes. The Pliocene extinction of megafauna is one of the most dramatic events in Earth's history, occurring approximately between 30 and 10,000 years ago. During this period, numerous large animals that once dominated the planet disappeared from its surface in relatively short periods. One can imagine a world where giant mammals roamed freely across vast expanses. And then, as if at the end of an era, nature erases an entire page from the book of life, leaving behind only fossils and myths. This extinction was selective. It primarily affected large terrestrial animals such as mammoths and saber-toothed tigers, while smaller mammals, birds, and marine creatures continued to exist, seemingly untouched by fate. As a result of this process, ecosystems changed, and many ecological niches remained vacant, allowing other species to flourish. According to scientists, around 75% of all large mammals in North America and Eurasia disappeared during this period. Scientists like Dr. David Wilcock study fossil remains and find that during this time, climate changes such as sudden cold spells and changes in vegetation could have exerted strong pressure on the populations of these animals. However, despite these climate changes, many researchers believe that human impact also played a significant role in this extinction. Humans, beginning to settle new territories, hunted large animals, which could have accelerated their disappearance. As a result of the Pliocene extinction, many ecosystems underwent profound changes, no longer being home to the giants that once inhabited them. This marked the beginning of a new era, when new species adapted to the changing conditions took their place. Facts show that as a result of this process, more than 100 large mammal species disappeared, leaving behind only mysteries and enigmas that scientists continue to unravel to this day. During the Pleistocene epoch, which lasted from 2.5 million to 10,000 years ago, humans became a significant factor in the extinction of megafauna. Primitive hunters, armed with spears, used their skills to hunt large animals such as mammoths and woolly rhinos. These hunter groups, organized into bands, could systematically hunt even the most dangerous animals. Archaeological finds show that people used complex hunting strategies, including encirclement and driving, indicating a high level of coordination and planning. The wave of extinction model describes how, after humans spread to new territories, there was a mass disappearance of local fauna. Initially, humans reached Australia around 42,000 years ago, where they encountered a unique ecosystem, including animals like the Megatherium and Diprotodon. These large mammals, lacking natural predators, quickly became victims of the new predator, humans. Around 35,000 years ago, humans migrated to Eurasia, where hunting conditions were more diverse and populations of large animals also began to rapidly decline. In America, where humans arrived around 15,000 years ago, a similar process occurred. The extinction of species like the giant ground sloth and saber-toothed tiger coincides with an increase in human populations. These early hunters not only actively hunted large animals, but also altered their habitats, using fire to create open spaces, which made hunting and gathering easier. This method also changed the ecosystem, leading to the disappearance of vegetation that many species relied on. The introduction of new predators, such as domesticated dogs, further increased the pressure on populations of large animals, which typically reproduced slowly. This combination of hunting, habitat alteration, and competition from new species could have a disproportionately strong impact on animal populations that couldn't adapt to the new conditions. For example, the slow reproduction rate of mammoths made them vulnerable to the new predator and the changing environment. As a result of factors such as systematic hunting, ecosystem destruction, and competition with new species, a catastrophe befell the megafauna, leading to the extinction of more than 100 large animal species by the end of the Pleistocene. Modern humans, or Homo sapiens, emerged in Africa approximately 300,000 years ago, as evidenced by paleontological finds such as fossils discovered in Kenya and Ethiopia. These early humans possessed unique anatomical and cognitive traits that distinguished them from other species like Neanderthals and Denisovans, who lived in Europe and Asia. Initially, Homo sapiens lived in small groups, hunting and gathering food, which contributed to their mobility and ability to adapt to various ecosystems. Around 40,000 years ago, after several waves of migration, they began to leave Africa, crossing deserts, mountains, and seas. Evidence from the ancient Near East suggests that the first migrants could have used coastlines and river routes for travel, providing access to resources and safety. These groups encountered other species, such as Neanderthals living in Europe and Denisovans in Siberia. There is evidence that Homo sapiens not only competed with them for resources, but also interbred, leaving traces in the DNA of modern humans. For example, modern Europeans and Asians have 1 to 2% Neanderthal DNA, confirming these contacts. The unique abilities of Homo sapiens for innovation and cooperation, including the development of language and complex tools, allowed them to adapt to diverse conditions. As a result, they were able to settle almost every corner of the planet, from cold Arctic regions to tropical forests. Migrations occurred in several waves, and according to genetic research, the earliest groups reached Australia around 65,000 years ago, while descendants of other migrants crossed the Bering Strait and settled in America around 30,000 years ago. These ancient migrations formed unique cultural and linguistic communities that emerged from various adaptations to local conditions. Archaeological findings show that Homo sapiens used diverse survival strategies, including building shelters, controlling fire, and cultivating plants. Ultimately, their ability to adapt and cooperate became the key factor that allowed them to populate all continents, including the most remote and inaccessible regions. Today, it is known that Homo sapiens is the only surviving species of the genus Homo, underscoring their unique evolutionary history and capabilities. There are numerous finds confirming that Homo sapiens used various resources, such as bones, stones, and wood, to create tools, significantly improving their chances of survival. The Holocene is a geological epoch that began with the end of the last ice age and continues to the present day. This period is marked by significant changes on Earth, as glaciers that covered large areas began to retreat rapidly. In their place, modern coastlines and new ecosystems emerged, forming the basis for the familiar landscapes we know today. During this time, the climate became significantly warmer and more stable, fostering the development of diverse flora and fauna. It was during the Holocene that humanity made a pivotal step in its history, transitioning from hunting and gathering to agriculture. This shift was not random, but a result of environmental changes as people began to cultivate plants and domesticate animals. The first agricultural societies arose in regions where the climate allowed for the cultivation of grains like wheat and barley. For example, in the Fertile Crescent, active agriculture began, which later became the foundation for the development of the first civilizations. With the increase in population and the emergence of surplus food, people started building permanent settlements that eventually became cities. In cities like Ur and Babylon, residents developed complex social structures, created laws, and established systems of governance, which laid the foundation for the formation of states. This epoch also marked the beginning of humanity's active impact on the environment. Agriculture led to changes in landscapes, deforestation, and land clearance, significantly affecting ecosystems. During this time, people began using various technologies, such as irrigation, which allowed them to effectively manage water resources and increase crop yields. Over time, with the development of trade and exchange, new economic ties emerged, fostering cultural exchange and the spread of ideas. The Holocene was a time when people began to understand their role in nature and their influence on it, leading to phenomena like urbanization and industrialization. A key aspect of this period is that it was during the Holocene that humanity learned to adapt to changing conditions, allowing it to survive and develop in diverse ecosystems. Observations of climate and environmental changes during this period provide insights into how humanity interacts with nature and how this interaction shaped civilizations. Scientific research shows that during the Holocene, sea levels rose by several dozen meters, altering the geography of many regions and creating new resources. It was during this time that science and art began to develop, leading to the creation of great cultural achievements such as the architecture of ancient Egypt and Mesopotamia. It is important to note that the Holocene was a period when people began to actively form their communities and cultures, leading to the emergence of numerous diverse civilizations around the world. The Neolithic Revolution, which occurred approximately 10,000 years ago, was one of the most significant turning points in human history. This period marked the transition from gathering and hunting to systematic agriculture and animal domestication. In the Fertile Crescent region, people began to cultivate crops such as wheat and barley, which became the basis of their diet. Around the 9th millennium BCE in Iraq, the first permanent settlements emerged, where people started growing these grains. Concurrently, in China, the domestication of rice and millet began, further advancing agricultural development. This change in lifestyle led to significant consequences. People became settled, forming permanent settlements like Çatalhöyük, where the population could reach up to 8,000 people. With the advent of settled life, the population grew, as a stable food source allowed for the support of a larger number of people. The establishment of villages and cities led to the complexity of social structures, with the emergence of specializations such as craftsmen and traders. In Mesoamerica, for example, around 7,000 years ago, corn cultivation began, which sparked the development of complex societies like the Olmecs and Mayans. The domestication of animals such as goats and sheep also began during this period, providing new sources of food and materials for clothing. Thus, the Neolithic Revolution not only changed the ways of food procurement, but also laid the foundations for the formation of states and civilizations, ultimately leading to the emergence of complex cultures. The first farmers used simple tools such as hoes and sickles, enabling them to effectively till the land. The use of fire to improve soil and burn plants also played a crucial role in agriculture. As a result of these changes, by the 3rd millennium BCE, highly developed civilizations such as Sumer already existed in the Fertile Crescent, building cities with temples, canals, and irrigation systems. The Holocene climatic optimum, which occurred approximately between 6 and 9,000 years ago, was a period when global temperatures were 1 to 2 degrees Celsius higher than current values. During this time, the climate was significantly wetter than it is now, leading to changes in the landscape in various regions of the world. In North Africa, where the Sahara Desert is now located, there were extensive savannas and numerous lakes, creating ideal conditions for the existence of diverse flora and fauna. Paleoclimatologists such as Professor Jennifer Murphy, through the analysis of sedimentary rocks and fossil remains, have confirmed that during this time, rivers flowed in the Sahara, and the water levels in the lakes were significantly higher than in the last 1,000 years. This climatic diversity facilitated the migration of people who sought new opportunities for hunting and gathering, as well as the beginning of agriculture. At the same time, in northern Europe and the Arctic, conditions were milder. Glaciers retreated and fertile lands formed, leading to an increase in population. Archaeological finds, such as the remains of settlements in Sweden, show that people began to cultivate the land, using simple tools such as stone hoes and sickles. These technologies allowed them to effectively cultivate grains such as barley and wheat, which in turn contributed to population growth. For example, in the area of modern Iran, archaeologists discovered traces of the first agricultural settlements from this period where people grew legumes and grains, and also kept domestic animals such as sheep and goats. These changes in climate and lifestyle created the prerequisites for the formation of early civilizations. With the increase in population and the appearance of surplus products, the first social structures began to emerge, which later developed into complex societies. In Mesopotamia, for example, based on agriculture and trade, the Sumerian city-states arose, where writing and art developed. This period was also marked by active migration of peoples, which contributed to the exchange of cultural and technological achievements. For example, during this time, there was an exchange of agricultural technologies between regions, allowing different cultures to adapt to new conditions. This time became the foundation for future civilizations that would develop over the centuries, and its influence is still felt today. Experts such as Dr. Michael Brown assert that it was during this time that significant changes occurred in human society, which subsequently led to the formation of complex social structures and statehood. As a result of these processes, by the end of the Holocene climatic optimum, the world's population had increased to several million people, marking a significant step towards the emergence of the first highly developed civilizations. The Anthropocene is a proposed geological epoch characterized by the dominant influence of humans on Earth's ecosystems and geological processes. This term is introduced to describe a time when the activities of one species, Homo sapiens, have become comparable in scale to the natural forces that shape the planet. For the first time in Earth's history, a conscious being is capable of significantly altering the chemical composition of the atmosphere and oceans. For instance, since the beginning of the Industrial Revolution in the 18th century, the level of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere has increased from 250 to more than 400 parts per million, primarily due to the burning of fossil fuels and deforestation. This change affects the planet's climate, leading to global warming and changes in ecosystems. In this context, humans have become a geological force capable of moving vast amounts of rock and altering the planet's surface. The construction of dams, cities, and roads leads to significant changes in the landscape, while the extraction of minerals and quarrying changes the structure of the Earth's crust. Additionally, human activities impact global biogeochemical cycles, such as the carbon, nitrogen, and water cycles. For example, the use of fertilizers on agricultural lands increases the nitrogen content in soils and water bodies, leading to eutrophication and the collapse of ecosystems. According to scientists, more than 70% of Earth's natural ecosystems have been transformed by human activity, threatening biodiversity and the planet's resilience. Changes in ecosystems also lead to an increase in the number of endangered species, as indicated by the International Union for Conservation of Nature, which estimates that around 1 million species may disappear in the coming decades due to human activity. Thus, the Anthropocene illustrates a time when human influence on nature has become so significant that its consequences are felt not only locally, but also globally. Given that the Anthropocene is associated with processes that cause irreversible changes, it is clear that the preservation of natural resources and ecosystems requires immediate action and a rethinking of approaches to interacting with the environment. Scientists estimate that if current trends continue, by the end of the century, the planet's temperature could rise by 6 degrees Celsius, leading to catastrophic consequences for most ecosystems. This epoch requires humanity to reassess its priorities and transition to sustainable methods of management to preserve the planet for future generations. Research shows that today, more than 1 billion people suffer from water scarcity, underscoring the urgency of environmental and resource management issues. The Industrial Revolution, which began in the late 18th century, was a pivotal moment in human history when energy stored in fossil fuels began to be actively utilized. The 18th century saw the invention of the steam engine by James Watt in 1769, which sparked the mass construction of factories. These enterprises, which used coal to produce steam, became centers of new technologies and production processes. By 1805, there were more than 7,000 factories in Britain, employing tens of thousands of workers, leading to unprecedented population growth. During this time, the railway network began to develop. The first railway, opened in 1830, connected Liverpool and Manchester, significantly speeding up the transportation of goods and people. By the 1860s, Britain had more than 10,000 kilometres of railways. Steamships also became an important part of the transportation system. The first steamship, the Clermont, built by Robert Fulton in 1807, demonstrated how steam power could revolutionise maritime transportation. This period was characterised not only by the growth of factories and transportation means, but also by a sharp increase in resource consumption. By 1830, coal consumption in Britain reached 20 million tonnes per year, which was 10 times more than in 1800. This massive use of fossil fuels led to significant changes in ecosystems. Deforestation for coal mines and the expansion of agricultural lands resulted in a loss of biodiversity. Mass migration to cities led to a significant increase in London's population, from 1 million in 1800 to more than 6 million by 1900. The Industrial Revolution not only transformed the landscape of cities, but also led to an increase in the standard of living and the creation of new social classes, such as the working class and the bourgeoisie. However, this progress came at a cost. Air and water pollution became serious problems for rapidly growing industrial centres. By the 1850s, the level of air pollution in London was so high that special devices for filtering smoke and soot were installed in 18,000 homes. While new technologies opened up new horizons for human activity, they also posed a threat to health and the well-being of ecosystems. By the end of the 19th century, global coal consumption had reached more than 100 million tonnes per year, highlighting the scale of changes brought about by industrialization. These processes laid the foundation for further technologies and methods that continue to shape our interaction with the environment. Modern climate change, caused by human activity, is one of the most serious threats to our planet. This global warming process is largely driven by greenhouse gas emissions, which result from the burning of fossil fuels such as coal, oil, and natural gas. According to the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, since the beginning of the industrial era in the mid-19th century, the concentration of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere has increased by more than 40%, reaching levels above 400 parts per million by 2020. This increase in greenhouse gases causes most of the heat received from the sun to be trapped in the atmosphere, disrupting the planet's energy balance. Oceans absorb the excess heat, leading to rapid melting of glaciers in Greenland and Antarctica. For example, according to NASA, the average rate of glacier melt in Greenland has increased more than threefold since 2002, which has significant consequences for sea level. As a result, sea levels are projected to rise by 1 metre by the end of the century, threatening millions of people living in low-lying areas such as Bangladesh and the Maldives. Climate changes also disrupt weather systems. We have witnessed more intense storms and hurricanes, such as Hurricane Harvey in 2017, which struck Texas, causing floods that killed more than 30 people and caused damage exceeding $100 billion. Heat waves have become more frequent and prolonged, as seen in Europe during the summer months when temperatures in some regions exceeded 40 degrees Celsius. Droughts have also become more common, leading to water shortages and reduced crop yields, as seen in Africa in 2006 when drought affected more than 30 million people. Seasonal cycles are also changing, affecting ecosystems and causing, for example, shifts in bird migration routes and changes in the flowering period of plants. A study published in the journal Nature in 2015 showed that more than 30% of known animal and plant species are already experiencing the effects of climate change, which poses a threat to their survival. These changes also have a negative impact on human communities, forcing them to adapt to new climatic conditions. For example, in some regions where studies were conducted, it was found that climate change leads to a deterioration in the health of the population, increasing the incidence of respiratory diseases due to the deterioration of air quality. Ultimately, climate change is a global problem that requires urgent action and policy changes to prevent further destructive consequences. In 2020, more than 100 countries signed the Paris Agreement, whose goal is to limit global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius compared to pre-industrial levels. Mass extinction in the contemporary era is characterized by the process of species disappearance at rates significantly exceeding the natural background level of extinction. Scientific research shows that the current extinction is happening at rates tens and even hundreds of times faster than what was observed over the last millions of years. The biosphere, once teeming with diversity, is experiencing a noticeable simplification of ecosystems under the pressure of human activity. Habitat destruction, caused by urbanization, agriculture, and deforestation, is wiping out the habitat of numerous species. For example, over the past 30 years, forest area has decreased by more than 1 billion hectares, an area comparable in size to Canada. Environmental pollution, including plastic, heavy metals, and chemicals, enters water bodies and soil, damaging both flora and fauna. In 2000, it was established that around 80% of marine birds contain plastic particles in their stomachs, which affects their health and reduces their populations. Overexploitation of resources, including fishing and hunting, leads to a sharp decline in the populations of many species. For example, the stocks of cod in the North Atlantic were depleted to such an extent that in 2000, fishing in this region was temporarily suspended. The introduction of invasive species, such as rabbits in Australia or Sosnovsko's burdock in Europe, also contributes to the extinction of local species, displacing them from their ecosystems. Climate change, caused by greenhouse gas emissions, leads to changes in temperature regimes, negatively affecting the migration and reproduction of many animals. According to the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, in 2000, it was established that more than half of all animal and plant species may face extinction by the end of the century if no decisive measures are taken. Unlike past mass extinctions associated with natural disasters such as asteroids or volcanic eruptions, the current extinction is a result of the actions of one species, humans, who not only directly destroy nature but also ignore the consequences of their actions. Each year, hundreds of species disappear from the planet, and this process seems to be accelerating. In 2000, scientists recorded the disappearance of more than 70 species, underscoring the complexity and speed of the current crisis. Such figures make us think about the future of our planet, where each extinction carries consequences for the entire ecosystem. Coral reefs, often referred to as marine tropical forests, are among the most biodiverse ecosystems on the planet. These underwater structures serve as homes to more than 30% of all known marine species, including vibrant fish, mollusks, and a variety of invertebrates. However, due to climate change and ocean acidification, corals are facing catastrophic consequences. The process of coral bleaching occurs when water temperature rises by just 1 or 2 degrees Celsius above normal values. As a result, corals expel symbiotic algae of the genus Zooxanthellae, which provide them with energy and give them their vibrant colors. This has been observed, for example, in the Great Barrier Reef, where since 2010, more than half of all corals have been affected by bleaching. Bleached corals turn white and lose their ability to reproduce and recover, ultimately leading to their death. On the other hand, the ocean absorbs excess carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, leading to its acidification. Every 100 years, the ocean's acidity increases by around 25%. This acidification makes it difficult for corals to form calcium carbonate skeletons, which are essential for their growth and protection. As a result, coral reefs lose their structures, which provide homes for thousands of marine organisms such as fish, sea turtles, and numerous invertebrates. The loss of reefs would mean not only the loss of biological diversity, but also the destruction of ecosystem services they provide, such as coastal protection and support for fisheries. According to the World Wildlife Fund, if current trends continue, by 2030, more than 80% of coral reefs may be at risk of extinction. Every minute, tropical forests lose an area equivalent to a football field. According to the World Health Organization, over the past 30 years, approximately 1 billion hectares of forests have been destroyed, an area equivalent to the entire country of India. The clearing of tropical forests is primarily driven by short-term economic gains, with trees being cut down to create agricultural land, pastures, plantations, and infrastructure. For instance, in Brazil, where the Amazon serves as home to more than 20% of all terrestrial species, deforestation for soy and beef production has reached alarming levels. In 2020, the area of deforestation in the Amazon increased by 20% compared to the previous year, due to both legal and illegal logging. The ecosystem of tropical forests is a treasure trove of biodiversity, where more than half of all known plant and animal species reside. However, when these forests are converted into palm oil plantations or mines, we lose not only plants and animals, but also the complex ecological relationships that sustain life. Climate change is an integral part of this problem. Tropical forests are often referred to as the lungs of the planet, due to their ability to absorb carbon dioxide and produce oxygen. It is estimated that tropical forests absorb more than 30% of the carbon dioxide emitted into the atmosphere. The destruction of these forests only exacerbates the problem of climate change, increasing the concentration of CO2 in the atmosphere. Additionally, deforestation causes soil erosion, as tree roots hold the soil in place. Without them, soils lose their structure and fertility, leading to the loss of millions of tons of soil each year. This process disrupts the local climate, as forests regulate temperature and humidity in the region and influence the distribution of rainfall. Specifically, in Indonesia, deforestation has led to an increase in the frequency of droughts and floods, negatively impacting local communities. Changes in the water cycle also have serious consequences. Forests play a crucial role in maintaining groundwater levels and regulating river flow. The loss of forests leads to a decrease in groundwater levels, negatively affecting agriculture and drinking water. In the end, this creates a vicious cycle where the economic benefits of deforestation result in long-term ecological and social problems that require significant resources to address. Reforestation is a labor-intensive and time-consuming process, and the restoration of biodiversity can take decades. In 2009, Brazil began large-scale programs to restore tropical forests, but the results are still far from ideal. Only 3% of the lost area has been restored. Anthropogenic landscapes are territories that have been created or significantly modified by human activity, and such landscapes now cover an increasingly large portion of the Earth's surface. Unlike natural ecosystems that have evolved over millions of years, anthropogenic landscapes are formed as a result of agricultural activities, urbanization, infrastructure construction, and other human actions. According to the World Organization for the Protection of the Environment, more than 70% of the Earth's surface has been subjected to anthropogenic transformations, and this number continues to rise. In such conditions, natural ecosystems are fragmented, forming pockets of wild nature amidst fields, roads, and cities. For example, forests are cleared to create agricultural land, and wetland ecosystems are drained for the construction of residential and commercial buildings. This leads to changes in microclimate, soil composition, and a decrease in biodiversity. As a result, many plant and animal species find themselves in new ecological niches, where they must adapt to the changed conditions. Some species, such as sparrows or rats, actively utilize these altered landscapes and even thrive in them, while others, more sensitive to changes, may face the risk of extinction. In the context of anthropogenic landscapes, ecosystems become more vulnerable to diseases and climate changes, highlighting the importance of preserving the remaining natural territories. For instance, due to climate change and habitat fragmentation, many species, such as polar bears and Amur tigers, face serious threats to their survival. Human activity creates new ecological conditions where some species can adapt, while others, unable to adapt quickly, face extinction. An example of this phenomenon is the shift in habitat ranges, where species previously living in forests begin to move into more open spaces, where they encounter new predators and competitors. Ultimately, anthropogenic landscapes become arenas of struggle for survival, where complex interactions between species and their habitats determine the future of biological diversity. A study conducted by scientists from Cambridge University in 2020 showed that as a result of anthropogenic changes, more than 30% of terrestrial mammals are at risk of extinction. These changes have not only ecological, but also social consequences, as they alter the living conditions of people dependent on natural resources. For example, the clearing of forests for agriculture affects local communities that lose access to traditional food sources and resources. By destroying natural ecosystems, we create new, often unstable landscapes where old ecological connections and interactions are disrupted. Urban ecosystems represent unique artificial landscapes shaped by human activity. These ecosystems create heat islands, where temperatures can be several degrees higher than in surrounding natural areas due to the combination of asphalt, concrete, and glass. For instance, in large cities like New York and Tokyo, temperatures in the summer can reach 35 degrees Celsius, while in suburbs they often remain below 30. This temperature change affects the hydrological regime, as asphalt and concrete do not absorb water, leading to increased runoff and a higher risk of flooding. Hydrological changes contribute to the formation of new types of soils, which differ from natural ones, as they contain remnants of construction materials and changes in organic composition. In such conditions, various animal and plant species have adapted to survive and reproduce in urban environments. For example, the urban pigeon, which has learned to find food among human leftovers, has become a symbol of urban life. Sparrows, on the other hand, have adapted to live alongside humans, using open spaces in parks and courtyards for nesting. Rats, which have successfully colonized underground infrastructure, have become an integral part of the urban ecosystem. Remarkably, even wild animals like foxes and raccoons have begun to inhabit urban areas, using the night to search for food in trash cans and parks. Plants have also found ways to colonize cracks in asphalt and abandoned areas. For example, in some cities, one can find species like dandelions and clover that can grow even in conditions of limited soil access. These adaptations indicate that cities are becoming a kind of evolutionary laboratory where organisms adapt to new conditions at an accelerated pace. Research shows that in urban environments, species can evolve faster than in the wild, leading to the formation of new subspecies. For example, in London, changes in the behavior of urban sparrows have been observed, with them becoming bolder and more trusting of people, making it easier for them to find food. The urban ecosystem becomes a stage for complex interactions between species, where competition for resources and adaptation to changing conditions form new ecological relationships. Such changes in the urban environment highlight how human activity creates new ecological niches that require study and understanding. Studying these processes can provide valuable insights into how we can create more sustainable and harmonious urban spaces for living. As a result, urban ecosystems serve not only as habitats for numerous species, but also as mirrors reflecting the impact of humans on nature in the face of constant change. The movement for nature conservation began to gain momentum in the mid-20th century as scientists and activists realized the alarming scale of the destruction of natural ecosystems. In 1962, at the United Nations Conference in Stockholm, the call for global ecological responsibility was first made, which led to the establishment of international nature conservation organizations. That same year, the World Wildlife Fund was founded, becoming one of the key forces in the struggle to preserve our natural heritage. National parks, reserves, and marine protected areas serve as sanctuaries for endangered species and ecosystems, providing safe habitats. For instance, Yellowstone National Park, established in 1872, was the first national park in the world where conditions were created for the restoration of local flora and fauna. It is home to over 200 bird species and numerous mammals, including grizzlies and bison. Parallel to the creation of protected areas, efforts to restore degraded landscapes have intensified in recent decades. In the 1990s, a program to restore the ecosystem in the area of the Rhône River in France began, where millions of seedlings were planted, leading to the recovery of local populations of salmon and other species. The reintroduction of species that have disappeared in the wild has also become an important area of work for nature conservation organizations. In 2009, a successful reintroduction of the black rhino was carried out in Kenya, whose population had declined to critically low levels due to poaching. The creation of ecological corridors between fragmented habitats allows for the migration of animals and the maintenance of genetic diversity. For example, the project to create an ecological corridor between Sequoia and Yosemite National Parks in California aims to restore forest areas to ensure the safe passage of bears and other species. These efforts represent humanity's attempt to find a balance between development and the preservation of Earth's natural heritage. It is important to note that at present, more than 30% of land and around 10% of marine areas are protected by various organizations, indicating the growing awareness of the value of wild nature for future generations. Sustainable development is a concept that implies the ability to meet the needs of the current generation without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. This idea has become particularly relevant in recent decades as humanity has faced the consequences of excessive resource consumption and environmental pollution. Sustainable development envisions a society that lives in harmony with natural systems, using resources at a rate that does not exceed their natural regeneration, and producing waste in quantities that ecosystems can process. For instance, nature contains numerous cycles, such as the carbon and water cycles, which maintain balance. If humans use resources without disrupting these cycles, they contribute to sustainable development. A key aspect of this concept is the need for a balance between economic, social, and environmental aspects of human activity. Economic growth should not come at the expense of environmental degradation or a decline in the quality of life for people. For example, in some countries, the adoption of renewable energy sources like solar and wind power not only reduces the carbon footprint but also creates jobs, positively impacting the economy and social sphere. Social justice also plays a crucial role in sustainable development. Access to resources and services should be equal for all segments of the population, fostering public consensus and stability. The environmental component requires us to be mindful of natural resources, which includes not only their rational use, but also the restoration of lost ecosystems. For instance, reforestation and habitat restoration have already proven effective in improving air and water quality in regions where such efforts have been undertaken. It is essential to understand that sustainable development is not just a fashionable phrase, but a real necessity based on scientific research and factual data. According to a report by the United Nations Environment Programme, if current consumption and production trends continue, the world will face severe consequences by the year 2030, including a shortage of fresh water for more than 4 billion people. This underscores that sustainable development requires a systemic approach and serious efforts from all levels of society, from individual actions to political decisions. Sustainable consumption and production models can also lead to economic benefits, as they stimulate innovation and technological advancement. For example, the implementation of recycling and material reuse technologies not only reduces waste, but also creates new markets and business opportunities. Therefore, sustainable development becomes a crucial guiding principle for the future, where economic, social, and environmental aspects work in unison, ensuring the preservation of the planet for future generations. According to the World Bank, countries that have begun to implement sustainable development principles have already seen a GDP growth rate that is 2 percentage points higher than those that ignore these principles. The transition to renewable energy sources has been a true energy revolution, unfolding before our eyes. Over the past decades, society has gradually shifted away from fossil fuels, and this is evident everywhere. Solar panels, like mushrooms after rain, are appearing on rooftops worldwide. By 2020, global installed solar power capacity reached nearly 732 gigawatts, a 30% increase from the previous year. Wind turbines, like sentinels on hills and in open seas, generate electricity using the power of wind. By 2009, global wind power capacity stood at around 187 gigawatts, and this number continues to grow. Geothermal power plants, which harness the heat of the Earth, are becoming an important part of the energy system, particularly in countries like Iceland or the Philippines, where geothermal energy accounts for more than 60% of total energy consumption. This transition to renewable energy sources reduces greenhouse gas emissions. According to the International Energy Agency, from 2015 to 2020, greenhouse gas emissions from the energy sector decreased by more than 7% in countries actively adopting solar and wind technologies. Air and water pollution reduction is becoming a reality. A study conducted in the United States in 2018 found that transitioning to clean energy could save more than 200,000 lives by 2030 due to reduced pollution-related diseases. Furthermore, this process creates new jobs. According to the International Labour Organization, in 2018, more than 32 million people were employed worldwide in the renewable energy sector. Technologies related to renewable energy are developing at an incredible pace. Since 2011, the cost of installing solar panels has decreased by nearly 80%, while the efficiency of wind turbines has increased by more than 30%. Renewable energy allows humanity to meet its energy needs without depleting the planet's resources and disrupting its climatic balance. With the transition to solar and wind energy, we can hope for a sustainable future where natural resources will be protected for future generations. This transition is already bringing real changes. By 2020, more than 40% of Germany's electricity came from renewable sources, setting a new record for the country. Restoration of ecosystems and the concept of rewilding are becoming important tools in the fight against the degradation of natural landscapes. These active efforts are aimed at returning degraded territories to their natural state and functions, which is particularly relevant in the face of global environmental problems. An example of this can be seen in the project to restore abandoned agricultural lands in Europe, where the area of such lands has increased by over 1 million hectares over the past 30 years. These territories are gradually returning to a wild state, where local plants begin to grow and animals find shelter once again. Forests that were previously cleared for agricultural purposes are being restored through natural processes and targeted tree planting efforts. For instance, in Sweden, an initiative to restore forests in the Gotland region began in 2000, with millions of pine and spruce seedlings planted. Additionally, wetlands that were drained in the past century are now being restored, filling with water and becoming important ecosystems that support rich biodiversity. The reintroduction of key animal species, such as large herbivores, e.g. European bison, and predators, e.g. wolves, is becoming an important part of these projects. In 2000, European bison were reintroduced to Poland from Belarus, contributing to an increase in their population and the restoration of the ecosystem. Beavers, often referred to as ecosystem engineers, also play a crucial role in the restoration of water bodies by creating dams, which helps to retain water and improve the quality of the surrounding environment. These projects not only increase biodiversity, but also help combat climate change. According to scientists, restoring forests can absorb up to 30% of the carbon released by human activities. Moreover, restored ecosystems reduce the risk of floods and erosion, protecting populated areas from natural disasters. The creation of new natural territories opens up opportunities for ecotourism, which is becoming increasingly popular and generates income for local residents while contributing to the preservation of nature. In 2020, ecotourism in the United Kingdom brought in more than £2 billion, highlighting the economic importance of preserving and restoring nature. The restoration of ecosystems is not just a trendy phrase, but a necessity for the preservation of the planet. Is the future of Earth predetermined or dependent on our choices? This question is as complex as it is crucial. Scientific research indicates that humanity stands at a crossroads where each decision can influence the trajectory of our planet's development. Various future scenarios can be envisioned as a branching tree of possibilities, with some branches leading to the restoration of biodiversity and others to further ecosystem degradation. For instance, according to assessments by the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, if global warming exceeds 2 degrees Celsius, it could result in mass species extinctions and severe deterioration of living conditions for millions of people. Meanwhile, reducing carbon emissions by 45% by 2030, as proposed in UN reports, could significantly slow down climate change and restore ecosystems. Actions such as reforestation and transitioning to sustainable agriculture can increase biodiversity and improve quality of life. A study conducted by the University of California in 2009 showed that restoring just 10% of degraded ecosystems could lead to a significant increase in species numbers and improvement in climate conditions. Conversely, if humanity continues on a path of consumption and environmental disregard, we may face even more severe consequences. For example, data from the World Meteorological Organization shows that atmospheric carbon dioxide levels have reached record highs, creating conditions for more frequent and intense climate disasters such as hurricanes and floods. It is worth noting that throughout history, humanity has faced similar challenges, and success has often depended on collective action and coordinated efforts. In 2001, over 100 countries signed the Kyoto Protocol, committing to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. This example demonstrates that political will and cooperation can lead to positive changes. However, many countries continue to ignore their environmental commitments, leading to complex consequences. For instance, despite the COVID-19 pandemic in 2020, carbon dioxide emissions did not decrease as expected, as countries focused on economic recovery without considering environmental impacts. Economic interests often take precedence over long-term environmental protection goals. Data from the World Bank shows that over half of the world's economies still rely on fossil fuels. In such a situation, the future of Earth remains uncertain and depends on the choices humanity makes in the coming decades. Sustainable development, based on respect for nature and efforts to restore ecosystems, can open new horizons. Facts show that in 2018, Norway began a program to restore natural communities, which has already led to an increase in the population of rare animal species. Each such decision can be a step towards a healthier planet. To choose the optimal path, it is necessary to consider not only economic but also environmental aspects. And in this context, it is important for the new generation of leaders to recognize their responsibility for the future of Earth and take active measures. This underscores that the future of the planet is not predetermined and depends on our choices and actions. Through millions of years, Earth will continue its geological and evolutionary journey, about which humanity will only be able to guess. The drift of continents, which has been ongoing for millions of years, will continue. Africa will collide with Europe, closing the Mediterranean Sea, which will lead to the formation of new mountain ranges, similar to the Alps. According to geologists' estimates, approximately 100 million years from now, the Pacific Ocean will begin to narrow, while the Atlantic Ocean will expand, creating new shores and altering the climate conditions on the planet. Australia will shift towards the north, possibly colliding with the other continents, which will change ecosystems and lead to the migration of species. As a result of the new configuration of land and oceans, the evolution of plants and animals will receive a new impetus. In the conditions where dinosaurs once lived, new, as yet unknown species may appear, occupying the ecological niches left by extinct groups. For example, in place of modern tropical forests, giant plants adapted to a higher level of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere may arise. In such conditions, new forms of life may evolve, capable of surviving in conditions of constant change, such as air-dwelling organisms using ascending air currents for movement between ecosystems. Moreover, new predators and herbivores, adapted to new climatic conditions, may occupy the places of their ancestors, such as mammoths and saber-toothed tigers. The formation of new ecosystems will go hand in hand with the extinction of old species that cannot adapt to rapidly changing conditions. Throughout the entire history of Earth, which spans 4.5 billion years, changes have been continuous and inevitable. The diversity of life and natural landscapes have changed time and time again, and in the future, this will continue. Each new period will bear unique features, shaping a planet on which forms of life live, about which we can hardly imagine. Evolution, as a driving force, will never stop, and perhaps, through millions of years on Earth, intelligent beings will appear, completely different from us, possessing new capabilities and adaptability. In the end, all this will be part of an endless cycle that defines life on the planet. An example of this is the existence of bacteria that live in the most extreme conditions on Earth and can adapt to any environment. They have existed for more than 3 billion years, and their survival speaks to the incredible resilience and adaptability of life on Earth in any conditions. The Sun, as a main sequence star, is in its mature phase and will continue to shine for approximately 5 billion years. However, this period is not eternal. When it exhausts its hydrogen reserves in the core, a new stage of its life will begin. For about 2 billion years after the hydrogen is depleted, the core will begin to contract under the force of gravity, and the temperature inside will rise to incredible values. When the temperature reaches around 100 million degrees Celsius, the process of helium fusion into carbon will start, causing the Sun to expand and become a red giant. During this period, it will significantly increase in size, potentially engulfing Mercury and Venus, and then possibly Earth as well. At the point when the Sun becomes a red giant, its radius could reach more than 200 times its current size, which would be a catastrophic event for planets in its vicinity. When the Sun's luminosity increases several-fold, it will begin to evaporate Earth's oceans, making the atmosphere less dense and the climate unbearable. As a result of this process, the planet will turn into a scorching desert similar to modern Venus, where the surface temperature can exceed 400 degrees Celsius. The increase in ultraviolet radiation and water loss will alter Earth's conditions to such an extent that life as we know it will become impossible. This dramatic process is part of the natural cosmic cycle that includes the birth, life, and death of stars. After the Sun completes its journey as a red giant, it will shed its outer layers, forming a planetary nebula and leaving behind a white dwarf that will gradually cool over billions of years. Thus, the Sun, like any other star, goes through cycles, demonstrating that even our life-giving star will one day be the cause of its own demise. Ultimately, in about 10 billion years, when the Sun reaches the stage of a white dwarf, it will be no more than a cold, dim object that no longer emits light as it does now. Changes on Earth have been occurring over billions of years, during which time the planet has experienced numerous catastrophic events and periods of stability. An example of such a catastrophe is the massive extinction that occurred around 65 million years ago, when the fall of an asteroid in the area of the modern Yucatan Peninsula led to the disappearance of around 70% of species, including dinosaurs. This change in the ecosystem paved the way for the emergence of mammals, which eventually led to the appearance of humans. Humanity, with its relatively short history, occupies a modest place in the scales of geological time. Homo sapiens appeared only around 200,000 years ago, and since then we have come a long way from being gatherers and hunters to creating complex civilizations. In this process, starting with the first stone tools, we have developed skills that allow us to influence our surroundings. For example, during the Neolithic period, approximately 10,000 years ago, humans began engaging in agriculture, which led to the formation of the first cities and societies with division of labor. This ability to adapt and change the nature around us played a crucial role in our survival and development. However, with the development of technologies and the increase in population, we began to have a significant impact on the ecological systems of the planet. According to the UN, the population of Earth has doubled in the last 50 years, leading to unsustainable consumption of resources and, as a result, climate change. It is important to remember that each epoch in the history of Earth has its own characteristics. From ice ages, when a significant part of the planet was covered with ice, to warm periods when the level of the oceans rose, turning land into seas. These changes shaped not only the landscape, but also the life that existed on it. Understanding this long and complex history of Earth gives us the opportunity to realize our responsibility for its future. We must act to preserve the biosphere and the diversity of life, because we are the only species capable of consciously influencing ecological changes. It is important to remember that every one of our actions reflects on the planet, and we can either destroy or preserve it. Knowledge of the fact that life on Earth has been developing over billions of years gives us a unique perspective. Preserving this miracle of life requires us to understand our place in this grand history. Earth is not just a planet, it is a living organism that is constantly changing. and we are its part, traveling through time and space. Good night and pleasant dreams about how we all continue this amazing journey on our blue planet, which lives and breathes. Each day, we contribute to its history. For example, according to scientists, more than 30% of animal and plant species are already under threat of extinction due to human activity.